What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Wednesday show, gang. A little late in the afternoon, couple minutes late getting started. Apologies about that. Had to get some lineups updated. They all came in just in a big rush there, couple minutes before 4 o'clock. So I just got everything up on the site. We should be up to speed. Really interesting 9-gamer to talk about, but hopefully everybody's having a good week. Happy hump day to you too, Harold Haas. It's a nice alliterative sentence to get us started. I feel like I'm doing vocal exercises. I don't know what any of them are, so I can't actually do one. I was going to try an improv one. Or try and it's like, what's that one that's red, yellow, leather, right? I think that's it. Red, yellow, leather. Yeah, I can't even say it. Holy shit, that's hard to say. No wonder it's a vocal exercise. Red, leather, yellow, leather. Ugh. That's a mess. Anyway, what's going on, gang? Lone Wolf's here. Monty Pritchett is here. Cujo's here. Good to see everybody. Cujo took some time off to go camping with the family. How'd that go? See any wildlife? Any bears? Any squirrels? Any rabbits? Raccoons? What else do you see out there? Cougars? Mountain lions? Snakes? Don't want to. Out of all of those, I think I'd probably least want to encounter, well, a bear and a cougar, but then a snake. And I feel like, at least bears and cougars aren't poisonous. Did you see the video of the guy fighting the bear off that was going around Twitter? It's pretty. I mean, he got away, so it's amusing. If it had gone the other way, it would have been a tragedy. But it was like a mountain climber guy, and a bear just came flying down out of nowhere and came over the top of him, missed him, and then was trying to get back up to him, and he was just yelling at it, go away, go away. Anyway, this is not exactly where I thought we'd get started on the show, but hey, here we are, talking about wildlife and camping and everything. Whereabouts were you camping, Coach? Best camping trip I went on, and I've only gone camping a couple times. Very limited camping experience. Although me and my dad always used to talk about it when I was a kid. We just never ended up going. But for one of my buddy's bachelor party, my buddy Matt back in the day, 15 of us, I want to say. Something like 15, 20 of us went camping for the weekend out by the Delaware water gap. But, the Delaware River between Jersey and Pennsylvania were in the part of it that we were in. And it was great. We just little area where you're allowed to make a fire and set up your tents and everything, and one of those design camping areas, but not like cabins or anything like that. You're actually doing a little minor bit of camping. And we brought all the beer and supplies that you would, bachelor party wise. And then the first day we did a rafting trip. It was just lazy river style rafting down the Delaware, because it's not rapids or anything like that. It's a briskly moving river. It's a somewhat real river, but there's no actual rafting to it. So it was just a bunch of us in our boats with our beers and everything, and then a bunch of other families and stuff. And that could go south in a hurry if you get the wrong kind of people in those family boats, because we're drinking and partying and everything. And we just nailed it. We got the right kind of people in those family boats. They were getting into water fights with us. Their kids were diving onto our boats and trying to, pull us into the water and everything. We just had a blast the whole time. A lot of fun. And then, of course, back to the, we've got pictures of, people jumping through bonfires and shit at that bachelor party. Fun time. So that was, I think, the last time I've been camping. Anyway, so an interesting little slate to talk about here as we get started. Mamba's here. Power's here. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Speaking of that, no one ever noticed the Tin Man needed oil. Tin doesn't rust, though. Is that true? I didn't know that. I think it is true. There's so many old myths about that movie that the person who allegedly hanged himself in the background and everything, which is not true. It was just part of a thing in the scenery. But I think one of the ones that is true is that the paint that they used on that actor, whatever his name was very poisonous and not at all good for him. Travis Duarte is walking in the room saying, "Oh, I'm early." Yeah. If you walk in and we're talking about The Wizard of Oz or camping, you're probably a little bit early. Although that could honestly come up anywhere and derail us for 5 minutes anywhere in the show, as you guys are well aware. Anyway, let's get into this one. Some September baseball, some interesting races still kind of undecided. Most particularly the game in Atlanta is quite interesting in that regard. And there's a lot of weather in that one. It's another Atlanta day, but it seems like a little bit heavier in terms of the threat to this game. Roth has it as orange, and it seems, again, like a little bit more than the typical it's going to be pop-ups, and if one happens to hit the stadium, it seems like there are going to be pop-up storms in the immediate area of the stadium, and we just have to kind of thread the needle on being able to play it. So keep an eye on the Mets and the Braves game. That's the important one. Yankees and Orioles, there's a little bit of rain in the area. It's kind of like a gray day here in the New York area. Right now, looking outside, if I had tickets for tonight, I'd absolutely be going. It seems like it's perfectly fine to play. Roth has it as green, yellow, but yeah, keep an eye. Those are the only two games with any weather concerns. That Yankees game is the first game up. It's Marcus Stroman on the hill for the Yanks. It's Zach Eflin going for the Orioles. Should be an interesting pitching matchup. 3.81 implied total for the Orioles. 4.28 implied total for the Yankees. One that could go either way for sure. Stroman typically a little bit difficult to hit home runs against, but you can definitely get to him for a couple of runs, particularly with such a good lineup like the Orioles have. Eflin on the other side, not pitching overly poorly in his last 10, 12 starts. Been pretty good down the stretch here. So reason to believe in his ability to succeed even against the Yankees lineup that does actually include Jason Dominguez today. So it's the best form of the Yankees lineup. It's a limited total for the Yanks, 4.28 in the home game. That's not overly appealing. But that lineup always does at least create a mid-board stack at worst. So they'll be in play. Both-sided situation all around there. Kevin Gausman on the mound for the Blue Jays going up against the Red Sox. 4.35 implied total for the Blue Jays, a 3.75 implied total for the Red Sox. That lineup without Rafi Devers obviously greatly diminished, but there's still a lot of bats that we like. Gausman has been up and down through the season, but he's kind of pulled it together through the second half. He hasn't given up more than 4 earned runs since all the way back on June 30th. So it's been a good stretch, and he's only given up 4 twice in that stretch. Pitches fairly deep into games, reasonable strikeout upside against this lineup. So Gausman's easily in play. On the Red Sox side, it's Richard Fitz, who is making his 4th start. He's gotten 5 or 5 plus in each of the first 3. We'll give him a look at price. Hasn't exactly distinguished himself in terms of strikeouts, but 22 and change in the minors this year. 7.5% walk rate. In the show, it's just 11.1%, so it got cut in half in terms of the strikeouts. Probably not a strong option against the low strikeout Blue Jays team, but we'll see how he fits in. I didn't mean to do that. We'll see how he slots in price-wise, because his name is Fitz. Sale is on the mound for the Braves. Looks pretty strong at the top of the board going up against the Mets. Mets, hard-hitting team. Mark Vientos hit another cheap home run last night. But Chris Sale is top of the board pitcher, the presumptive NL Cy Young winner this year. He's been just dominant through most of the season, and down the stretch here, he's looked fantastic. No issues with going to him at price. On the Mets side of the board, it's David Peterson, who we do know has strikeout stuff on the right day. Last time out, though, he got kind of dinged by Philly. Could be in a high danger spot here, but against a lineup with a lot of strikeouts in it, there's reason to believe in David Peterson. Marlins and the Twins, a 3.67 implied total for the visiting Marlins. They got to Bailey Ober last night. Tonight they'll get Simeon Woods Richardson for probably 4 and change. He hasn't been pitching deep. They've been kind of cutting the innings at a 5 cap and then just seeing how he does getting to the 5 lately. So I don't think he's necessarily in play even against the Marlins. We'll give him a look as far as where he lands price and projection, but I don't love that spot with the short innings. 4.92 implied total for the Twins. That's a different story. Edward Cabrera on the mound for the Marlins. A talented young pitcher, but with a lot of flaws and a lot of issues with walks and a lot of issues with home runs throughout the season. So kind of a limited option there. Much would rather have the Twins bats. Angels and the White Sox. We've got Jose Suarez and Davis Martin, and surprisingly just a 3.87 implied total, 3.71 implied total. Those are low totals because these teams are so bad, but those are not overly appealing pitchers either. So we're going to give that one a hard look. It might fall into a no sides. It might fall into a 4 sides. Cards on the Rockies Coors Field game. We saw some good pitching results in Coors. I ended up going to the Coors pitcher in the Rockies pitcher in my FanDuel lineup just because it was the only thing that would work with the stack that I wanted to build, and it would be entirely contrarian. That was the best piece of my lineup, was going to the Rockies pitcher, the risk that it embraced. He actually paid off. Everything else kind of sucked. I don't know that we want to do that again. It's Austin Gomber on the mound today for the Rockies, and it's Eric Fede on the mound for the Cardinals. 554 implied total for the Cards, 509 implied total for the Rockies. Fede's had his moments throughout the season. Gomber can give you clean innings from time to time, so it's kind of the same situation as it was yesterday. Two gettable teams in that game, but very high totals in Vegas. We'll give it a look. We'll peel the onion. Brady Basso on the mound for the A's, looking kind of reasonable, maybe at a fair price. And then on the mound for the Rangers, Cody Bradford going up against the A's, looking like a strong option. 369, 370 implied total for the Rangers, 388 implied total for the A's. Giants in the D-backs, it's Zach Gallen, it's Mason Black. The Diamondbacks loading up for power against Mason Black. A 515 implied total is the highest non-Coors total on the board. Looks super appealing toward the end of the night there. And I think Zach Gallen entirely playable against the Giants, although that did not work out with Brandon Pfaadt last night. It's definitely a high strikeout spot, so there is opportunity there for Zach Gallen. As shaky as Zach Gallen can be and as uncomfortable as he can be sometimes, typically the downside can be 4 or 5 earned runs against. He hasn't melted down throughout the season, but he does have a number of those games. So it's kind of a faith-based play. He is a tier down from a lot of the other, expensive true ace kind of pitchers. And then a really solid pitching matchup to round things out at the end of the night with the ridiculous Pods and Dodgers series. If you didn't see it last night, the Padres walked off a playoff clinching game with a triple play with Shohei Ohtani on deck. Pretty sick. They were down 2, so Ohtani's plate appearance would have made a difference. And that's obviously the guy you want coming up if you're the Dodgers. So a triple play to get out of it. Pretty sick. Oh, Frankie Lindor back. Look at that. It's Wednesday. Damn. Put him on the bench this week. I couldn't fade another week the last week of the season. I'm glad he's back, but doesn't help the dynasty team. Anyway, it's Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Dodgers and Dylan Cease on the mound for the Pods. Both guys super talented. Seems to favor pitching. Vegas favors pitching. I like both options up at the top of the board. They're both capable of racking up good strikeout games, even against those low strikeout opponents. They're both capable of pitching deep into the game. So we'll consider both pitchers, but we're going to have to talk bats just because of how good those two lineups are. So interesting one to end things in the nightcap. You can see those guys land right next to each other up near the top of the board. We see that a lot when we land in these situations, particularly with like the Padres, the Dodgers, when they match up together, and there's such good pitching on both sides up and down in basically every matchup that the pitchers tend to land next to each other, and then the stacks kind of land next to each other just because of how good everything is. It just reinforces the idea that everything's playable, but it might be one of those spots where it is a pretty decent pitching duel, but both guys give up a couple of runs at very high prices. Even 2 or 3 runs at those prices could ding you as compared to, say, a Chris Sale for more or a Cody Bradford against the A's for less. Zach Gallen against the Giants, same thing. So no safety in those spots, but those are 2 tremendous pitchers even against those teams. Sale at 11-3, 11-1. You have to pay through the nose to get to, but he's definitely worth it at those prices. Monster strikeout numbers. By far the highest projected pitcher on the board. Could have cut him down a little bit, but I gave him his full run here. I don't see any reason they wouldn't want to unleash him in a situation where they're, a game and a half back in a direct head-to-head. So seems like a spot where Sale is almost likely to go 7 innings if all goes to plan. Cody Bradford looks pretty tremendous against the A's at 89, 88. A lot of playability in Bradford, a lot of Ks in that A's lineup. A little bit of power threat, certainly from a hitter like Brent Rooker in that A's lineup. We're going to give them a look as well against the lefty. There's a little upside there, but Bradford has been pitching pretty well. Kevin Gausman I talked about a couple minutes ago, but definitely think there's upside against that diminished Red Sox lineup with some strikeouts in it, and he has been pitching fairly well. 9,000 and 8,600 price over here hasn't really caught up. Kind of like the idea of the 86 and 88 paired together. You could also maybe throw Zach Eflin into that mix at 8,000. That's kind of interesting. And then you get this run of just bargain bin guys here to work with. It's uncomfortable, but out of the group, Fede at Coors Field might be the most realistic. I don't love the looks of Cabrera because I don't trust him with those walks against that Twins team and just their ability to sequence and create runs. It's a great price, and he does have strikeout upside at 62. Fede's by no means safe, but he might be safer even at Coors than Cabrera. Certainly trust him better more than Davis Martin. It feels honestly a little high. We'll look at Martin. I'm thinking that might be a little high. Those are good prices if that aligns correctly, though. Basso, again, against Texas. On FanDuel, that seems more in play at 68 than at 75 on the DraftKings slate. Peterson, just kind of high price for where he falls on the board relative to everybody else, but there are strikeouts for him in that Braves lineup. Just depends on which version of David Peterson. He's been distinctly two different pitchers this season. Simeon Woods Richardson, I think we're dealing with that projection and that projection alone. I don't think there's ceiling on it because I don't think he's getting more than 5 innings under any circumstances here. Even against the Marlins, it seems pretty shaky. Jose Suarez, great matchup against the White Sox, projects out fairly well. It's actually a pretty big difference between that FanDuel projection and that DraftKings projection. I wonder why that is. I didn't spot that before. That DraftKings projection ought to be a little higher with that FanDuel one where it is. I'm going to have to take a look at that after the show. It's a guy to keep in mind. Stroman against Baltimore, just no real DFS upside. Better real-life pitcher than a DFS pitcher on most days, and a really dangerous lineup on the other side. Stroman does have a little bit of ceiling on these medians, but not really somebody you want to chase for 9,100. At 8,000, maybe you can chase the quality start on FanDuel and hope he finds a few Ks along the way. He's going to be a low-owned option in that matchup against the O's, but feels a little chasey to me. Fitz feels like a no against Toronto. Gomber feels like bigger no against St. Louis, but he's very, very cheap for the innings potential on DraftKings at 55. If you're going to consider Fede at 66, for 55, you can consider Gomber. There is daylight between, it's a 5-point gap between those projections, but that's reasonable for that 1,100 in price savings, all the way at the bottom of the price board. And then Mason Black just looks like a target for Diamondbacks bats. A lot of lineups are in. Starting things off with Stroman, 91, 8,000. So again, just a better real-life pitcher, I think, than a DFS pitcher. And he's only a shaky real-life pitcher most of the time. 4.04 ERA with a 4.52 xFIP this season, just 17.1% strikeouts, 9.1% walks. It's not a great Marcus Stroman year even. He's been better than this in his career. 5 1/3 in his most recent start. Gave up 3 earned, 4 strikeouts, 5 earned in the start before that. Just lasted 3 2/3. An appearance in relief. They had moved him into the bullpen. Now he's back in the rotation. They were moving him and Nestor Cortez back and forth. Nestor just went on the IL this afternoon. So Stroman's got the talent to throw 6, maybe even 7 clean innings against this team, but for 9,100, I really don't see any true ceiling on it on DraftKings. At 8,000, if you want to chase the quality start on FanDuel, it is there with, let's say, a 30-ish point ceiling, but that's about all there is most of the time. If you roll this 1,000 times, Stroman's not winning you the slate more than a handful. On the other side, Zach Eflin, a little bit better. 20.1% strikeouts, a minuscule 2.9% walk rate, 3.53 ERA with a 3.70 xFIP underneath it. Nothing wrong with that. Nearly a 10% swinging strike rate. He's a decent strike thrower. 3.17% home runs and has been demonstrably good at inducing weak and medium contact. 35.5% hard hits and under 88 miles an hour of exit velo. Reasonably okay launch angle. That's a medium trajectory kind of a launch. So you get a good ability, a believable ability to check home run power. When he makes mistakes, though, they can still go get out of the yard, and this team does have a few guys that can manage to do that. So it's by no means a safe spot for Eflin, but this Yankees lineup, a 23% strikeout rate for the confirmed version of the lineup. There are definitely strikeout targets there for Eflin. It's just a very high danger spot. It's the opposite situation. They're the exact same prices, just opposite. So Eflin at 8,000 over here is better, and Stroman at 8,000 over there is better. Neither guy is a top priority pitcher. Both guys in the mix for minor shares on those sites, and really less appealing over here. 91 for Eflin feels a little bit inflated for a 20% strikeout rate. So, not a big fan of either option. For the Orioles, Gunnar Henderson is a tremendous play off the top. 37 home runs on the year, 21 stolen bases. Stroman's given up a 6.7% barrel rate on the season, just a 10-degree average launch. Again, he's decent at keeping the ball down, but he's not elite at it. He's not Framber Valdez. He's not Logan Webb. So you can get Marcus Stroman for power. And particularly a lefty in Yankee Stadium can get Marcus Stroman for power. And particularly Gunnar Henderson as a lefty in Yankee Stadium. I think you see where I'm going with this. 253 ISO, 157 WRC+. Well worth the 62-41 across sites. Jordan Westberg hitting second today, 47-32. Multi-position eligible in the infield on both sites. Tremendous. 18 home runs, 270, 319, 496 this year with a 227 ISO. It's a very strong 428 plate appearances out of Westberg. Anthony Santander for just 5,200, 3,700 on FanDuel is reasonable, but just 52 on DraftKings. This is a higher relative price. 44 home runs this year, including one last night. Monster shot at putting another one into the right field seats. Nothing wrong with going to Santander, just back-to-back days. 277 ISO, a 130 WRC+ in easily his best season. Free agent this year, too. Go figure. Colton Cowser at 44-31. He hit his 23rd home run. Another lefty in the lineup that could target the short porch and right. 203 ISO for him. All four guys at the top of the lineup for the Orioles above a 200 ISO. 3 out of the 4 way above a 200 ISO. Everybody in the lineup except for James McCann at the bottom spot is a positive run creator this year. Ridiculous talent on this team. Ryan Mountcastle, just 4,200. Topped out at 13 home runs so far, 487 plate appearances. Will probably end up around 14. Maybe he gets one the rest of the week. Maybe he gets to 500 plate appearances. If he could get to 15 and 500, that would look a little better, but not much. 159 ISO, but a 108 WRC+. He's been a positive run creator. He's been hitting the ball really hard. 8.8% barrels, 45% hard hits. He's not bad. He's just underwhelming, but his price is way down relative to where it could have been, or where it once was. Ryan O'Hearn for the same price, same position on DraftKings, 2,800 with outfield eligibility too on FanDuel. 261, 333, 416 this year, a 155 ISO. He's creating runs 15% better than average. He gives you the lefty advantage, so between the two, I probably would target O'Hearn, but Mountcastle is the better of the two hitters. He does hit the ball harder. It's just the righty-lefty of the thing. So I'd take O'Hearn, but I would probably just build a second lineup and put Mountcastle in that spot on that one. Ramon Urias, another guy who hit a home run yesterday. He's got 11 on the season. We've been talking about him all year long as a sneaky. Whenever he's in the lineup, you can play him. And he's got 3 position eligibility for just 2,500 on FanDuel, 3,800 at third base, perfectly workable on DraftKings. Dude's got a 9.4% barrel rate, 39.6% hard hits, strikes out just 18.7% of the time, 11 home runs in 283 plate appearances, a 118 WRC+ with a 181 ISO. It's a guy we've seen hit for power in small shares in the past. 16 homers in 445 plate appearances back in 2022. I think there's another good season back that way, but I'm not going to unwrap the whole thing. Ced Mullins, up to 18 home runs and 30 stolen bases. It's going to be, he's got a shot at getting to I keep forgetting that the season ends on Sunday. It's got a shot at getting to a 20-30 plus season, but 18-30 is pretty respectable in terms of counting stats in fewer than 500 plate appearances. 100 WRC plus on the nose. Definitely upside there for 4,600, 3,000. He's gotten a little bit more expensive than he had been, but basically everybody in this lineup outside of the stars up top are pretty cheap. Is pretty cheap. James McCann, 3,027, just a mix and match quality catcher, and there's not a lefty on the mound, so you could probably skip him. On the Yankees side, Gleyber Torres, 42-29. He belongs in a lot of your Yankees stacks. 15 home runs on the season. An egregious base running error last night that is kind of unforgivable, but it's Gleyber, so we'll forgive him. 330 on base is what I care about as long as he's leading off ahead of Soto and Judge, and it seems like he's just got a regular home in that spot. 121 ISO should be higher, could be higher. 20.2% strikeouts is up 6 points from last year. 9.7% walks, around the same. The hard hits and the barrels are down. We've talked about it all season, but at the end of the day, he is still a positive run creator for a very, very cheap price at second base, who hits ahead of 2 of the best hitters in baseball. So there's ridiculous correlated scoring upside any day you play him. And we know for sure that Gleyber's got a better bat than what we've seen this year, especially when it comes to a little bit more power, a little bit better ability to put bat on ball and establish and work the strike zone. So he's a good fit in the leadoff spot, and he's a good positional fit for DFS at second base for those prices. So I think he's kind of underrated at this point, even with the scuffling. Soto's ridiculous, 40 home runs on the season. Judge has 56. Hit his 56 last night. 10 stolen bases for Judge, a 376 ISO, a 218 WRC+. He cost $7,000 on DraftKings, more than several pitchers on this slate. $6,500 for Soto is also a pitcher price. 5,000 on FanDuel. They're just worth it. Austin Wells, 43-28, has 13 home runs, puts really good bat on ball, 8.7% barrels, 38.5% hard hits, 21.6% strikeouts. Getting regular shots from the left side in the cleanup role between Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton just means he sees a ton of good pitches to hit, which helps him out a lot. 108 WRC plus for the cheap catcher. Definitely in play against Zach Eflin. Stanton crushes the ball when he makes contact. 26 homers on the season, a 240 ISO. I saw somebody tweet out yesterday he had like 4 out of the 10 hardest hit balls in the game, but struck out 4 times, something along those lines. It's what you take that with Giancarlo Stanton. You're just looking for those monster events. He has had a good season this year. Jazz Chisholm at 55-36, an asset on FanDuel where you can move around between second, third, and the outfield. 23 home runs, 38 stolen bases. Tremendous option in the Yankee lineup. Makes him deeper. Jason Dominguez is finally back in the lineup. Switch hitter, 3,800, 2,900. Very, very cheap for the upside. 2 home runs, 4 stolen bases in just 47 plate appearances so far. 195, 298, 366, but who cares? Tiny sample. What I care about is that the kid's producing his counting stats. Seemed like he was just hitting his stride over the weekend, and then, of course, idiot benched him yesterday, but hopefully that didn't cool him off. 31-27 for Anthony Rizzo in the 8 spot, 8 home runs, really struggling at the plate. I still believe, but I don't know that you need to go there today, and you've got a better option from the same side of the plate in Austin Wells on FanDuel for just 100 more. On DraftKings for 31 versus the 43 for the catcher. You can play them both. You can mix and match. It depends on what you're looking to do. I do think Rizzo's playable, especially with the lefty Yankee Stadium of it all, but it's getting difficult to trust him right now. And then Anthony Volpe's just a mix and match quality shortstop, and he's kind of priced like it on DraftKings. A little less so on FanDuel, but that's a playable price. This is a cheap price. 12 home runs, 27 steals. Not great. Yankees bats, Orioles bats, Eflin, Stroman, and really Stroman's not a good consideration. But again, Eflin here, Stroman there. If you're determined to play Stroman, just follow the pricing. Red Sox with Richard Fitz on the hill. In what universe, the thing beeped, in what universe does Red Sox, the way I said it, sound like Alexa? And now I said her name and it didn't beep. Drives me bananas. It responds to the TV more than it responds to me. Anyway, Richard Fitz making his 4th start. 5 innings in his most recent one. That was on the 20th against the Twins. 5 hits, no runs, 3 strikeouts. 2 strikeout game over 5 innings against the Yanks. 2 hits, no runs, 3 walks. 2 strikeout game over 5 2/3 against the White Sox. Gave up 2 unearned runs in that one. So he's got a 0 ERA with a 5.17 xFIP. That's the biggest xFIP to ERA difference I think we've seen all season. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be any good. 11.1% strikeouts in the show so far, and you just heard the limited totals. In the minors, though, 22.6% Ks, a 7.5% walk rate, over 116 2/3 in 23 starts. That's pitching in Pawtucket as a 24-year-old, so just right on the borderline. He just looks at best like a league average, 4th or 5th starter kind of a type. 6,900, 7,000. I don't love the Blue Jays as a target, but this is a limited version of the Blue Jays lineup that is a little bit higher. Strikeout at 22.7%. No George Springer, even though he's been pretty bad this season. It's really Vladdy and not a lot of threat if you look up and down that lineup today. So maybe a few darts of Richard Fitz and just looking for like a Kachanowicz-style clean innings. Not that necessarily is the ideal thing to chase. But 69, 7,000, at least it's a very cheap square, and he has been successful at booking clean innings so far in the show. Gausman on the other side, a lot more appealing. He's facing a lineup with a 26.5% strikeout rate and no Rafael Devers. That said, still very threatening with Jarren Duran, who's been fantastic this season. Willie Abreu, Tristan Casas, 3 very good lefties off the top of the lineup. Tyler O'Neill, a tremendous righty. Yoshida, another good lefty, and then the back end of the lineup is not bad man for man. But those 4 top hitters there, the best strikeout rate is 21.8% for Jarren Duran. He's gettable. Everybody else is in the high 20s or 30s, and that continues on down the lineup with Trevor Story and Nick Sogard in small plate appearance samples also in the 30s. So it seems like a really strong spot for Gausman. And over his the last time he gave up more than 3 earned runs was August 2nd. He gave up 4 earned runs, 5 runs total on 8 hits in that one, struck out just 2. That was coming off of a complete game, 3-run start, 8 strikeouts against the Rangers. The game where he gave up the 4 runs was against the Yanks. Prior to that, 4 runs in 6 2/3, 2 runs in 7 innings, 2 runs in 6 innings. Pitches deep into ball games, and then after that run, completed the 7th inning 4 times. One of those 4 times he completed the 8th inning. Has not given up more than 3 runs. Only gave up 3 runs twice. A 10 strikeout game in there. Mostly working in the 4 to 6 strikeout range. For the season, he's at just 21.8% strikeouts on 10.7% swinging, 26.1% CSW. We've seen him be much higher strikeout in the past. So there's reason to believe it's not just, plucking it out of the air and saying, well, they strike out a decent amount of the time, so therefore he's going to strike out guys. He's got the ability to be a better strikeout pitcher. So he could go find it today. 86, 9,000 seems like a worthwhile price. He's good for innings. So even if he gives up a few runs along the way, you've got decent reliability for 6 or 7 innings. You've got decent reliability toward the quality start. I would maybe, if I took a big position of Kevin Gausman, hedge with some Red Sox. Which reminds me, the daily, I got to put my placeholder lineup in. So you can hedge with some Red Sox, and that starts with those lefties up at the top of the lineup. Kind of duh. Jarren Duran's having a ridiculous season. Not since, what was it, Stan Musial in 1940. Has somebody hit as many home runs and triples, I want to say it was? Maybe doubles. Just ridiculous historic level numbers out of Jarren Duran this season across the entire slash line. Just what we put right here looks tremendous, but then if you're just looking at those extra base hits, the doubles, the triples, and everything, he's just been phenomenal this season. 54.39 honestly doesn't do him justice over on DraftKings. It's a higher FanDuel price. Abreu at just 3,600, 3,000. Definitely interested there. 49.8% hard hits, 11.2% barrels, 15 home runs on the season, a 211 ISO. He's created a run 17% better than average. Take some shots at Kevin Gausman with Willie Abreu today if you're stacking up Red Sox. He is very cheap. Tristan Casas, 4,300, 3,200, also absurdly cheap. 12 home runs in just 227 plate appearances. 13% barrels, 43.9% hard hits. Yeah, he strikes out a lot, but he also draws walks. 119 WRC plus, a 219 ISO in the small sample, getting on at a 344 clip. Tristan Casas is a star if he plays a complete season. Tyler O'Neill, 5,000, 3,500, has 31 home runs in just 465 plate appearances. A 275 ISO, 132 WRC plus. Big chunk of that comes against left-handed pitching, but he's tremendous against righties as well. 17.5% barrels, 49% hard hits. Totally affordable at these prices. Yoshida at 35, 3,000 has 10 home runs of strong slash line. Mostly a line drive style hitter, but a guy who comes in with decent amount of run creation, correlated scoring ability, and a guy who can drive the ball and drive in runs. So definitely a reliable, especially for the price option in the outfield in the heart of the Red Sox lineup, probably with a little bit more to do with Rafi Devers out of the way in this situation as well. Trevor Story at 39, 29 has 2 home runs and 6 steals. He's slashing 259, 330, 400 over his 94 plate appearances. So far, so good. I've been talking about him, saying that I'm a believer in the bounce back for talent, regardless of the Coors Field of it in his history. I definitely think Trevor Story is going to remain interesting, and while he's so low cost at shortstop, he's a good way to fill that position. So if you're building Red Sox stacks, definitely in play. Even as a one-off at 39, there is enough talent in lineups that you're not using Kevin Gausman on the mound. There's plenty of talent in Trevor Story, so I think you can go there at cheap pricing just to one-off shortstop or in small stacks. You could go like a Casas O'Neill Story small stack on DK. Obviously, that just becomes a 4-man on FanDuel with somebody else included. Nick Sogard at 25, just kind of a mix and match quality player across multiple positions in the infield on both sides. Connor Wong, 37-28, remains exceedingly affordable where you need catchers. He's also got first base eligibility over there. 283, 338, 430 for the season, a 112 WRC+. It's just been good all season. Maybe not a star, maybe not a standout power bat or anything. I was expecting more power this year, but instead we got average on base and run creation. It's just as good. Maybe it creates fewer monster DFS scoring events, but for correlated scoring for a piece of a stack at a key position for a cheap price all season, absolutely would take what Connor Wong's been doing. And Manuel Valdez, you just play, mix and match quality if you need a cheap option, but he's not any good. On the Blue Jays side, leading off with Jonathan Klaas today, 2,600, 2,100 across sites. 53 plate appearances, pretty empty. 56 WRC+, 3 steals, a 264 on base, striking out 26.4% of the time. Why not give him a shot in the leadoff? Walks 3.8% of the time. Seems like a good idea. Class, I'm going to take a sip of this coffee so I can put this gigantic Batman mug down. About 5 minutes ago, the fountain, the pet water thing in the other room, when it gets low in the little tank that I have to refill in the back, it starts trickling. I think I've talked about this before, and it just sounds like somebody's taking a leak in the other room, and it's driving me nuts. But I'm not going to take a break to go refill it. Jonathan Klaas in the minors this year, 146 plate appearances, 2 homers, 12 steals, 244, 288, 363. Last year, he had a split. All right, so with Seattle, he had 10 home runs and 26 stolen bases and 280 plate appearances. All right, so there's a reasonable option here. 12 home runs and 38 steals total in like 420 plate appearances. Was not as good in Toronto's system. Was much better while with Seattle. Mix and match quality maybe in the outfield. Nathan Luke's giving you a little bit. 303, 372, 409 so far. A 123 WRC plus. A good average and on base option. Him and there's no Spencer Horwitz in the lineup today, which sucks additionally with because he's who's filling in for Lindor in my lineup. Fuck. Vladdy Guerrero, 53, 37, 30 home runs on the year. A 224 ISO, 166 WRC plus. Having a tremendous season. Alejandro Kirk, miscast in the cleanup role just kind of all season when he's landed there. 5 home runs on the year, 247, 314, 354 hitter with a 91 WRC plus. Entirely skippable if you're going to Blue Jays. He's in a key spot in the lineup, though, so you can kind of play it. But he's an example of why this is kind of a low-end stack today and maybe a playable spot for Richard Fitz. There's no real threat there from the cleanup hitter, and it gets kind of worse going down. 27.4% strikeout rate for Madison Barger so far. In 212 plate appearances, he's done really nothing. 7 empty home runs, a 76 WRC+, plus, bad slash line. Ernie Clement is super low strikeout, but that's basically all he does. He doesn't hit the ball hard at all. 11 home runs, 12 steals in 436 plate appearances is kind of unimpressive. Just a 143 ISO, 93 WRC+. plus. Just going to put some balls in play, but with weak and medium contact. Leo Jimenez striking out 29.1% of the time, has 4 home runs, very weak slash line, but a 103 WRC+, plus with a 330 on base. Just through some BABIP, though. 5.9% walk rate. Where's that on base coming from? Yeah, that'll do it. 313 BABIP. So just lucking his way to some of that on base, which is where that WRC plus is getting its chin above water. That's not really a good player, or at least not right now. Joe Loperfido not having a good season either. 4 home runs, 4 steals, and 251 plate appearances. All these strikeouts, 35.1%. And then Tyler Heineman hasn't given us anything, but it's only been 10 plate appearances this year. Last year in 47, 237, 383, 316. No appeal. In 174 the year before, also no appeal. Very, very short lineup for the Blue Jays today. No real faith in Richard Fitz, but again, if you could just give me 5 plus, with a couple of strikeouts, and he was a 22% strikeout pitcher in AAA. Just have an okay day for those prices. He's not off the board. This goes Gaussman, Red Sox bats, Richard Fitz, Blue Jays bats. And the Blue Jays are really pretty limited here. Mets and the Braves. So this is the one to keep an eye on for weather, just as a reminder. A lot of rain in the area, more so than the usual, oh, it might rain in Atlanta, it seems like. It seems like this one is actually under legitimate threat. Are they scheduled for tomorrow? They've got a 7:20 on the schedule for tomorrow, so it would be very easy to scrap this game and play 2 tomorrow. Something to keep in mind, because this is a pretty critical game. So if it's at all sloppy, they might just scrap it and want to play it dry. So definitely something to consider. This would probably be, for those reasons, just with the, especially in a game in Atlanta, there's a lot of cause to believe that if it's messy, they're going to want to play it in the best possible conditions for the playoff stretch. So I would definitely go into this one with a eye on the weather, but Chris Sale, obviously the top option on the board, which makes it a little bit challenging. Maybe he goes a little bit under-owned compared to where he should be, given the price and the weather threat. That could come together to create a low-owned situation for Chris Sale, which would be dynamite. Projects way up to the top of the board. He's got a 32.1% strikeout rate this year, a 2.38 ERA with a 2.65 xFIP, 5.6% walk rate. He's fantastic. 14.1% swinging, 32.3% CSW. All we need is the rain to hold off. He's matched up against a Mets team with a 23% strikeout rate. They're obviously very good. They get Frankie Lindor back at the top of the lineup today. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of quality in that Mets lineup, but there are definitely some Ks. As you can see, if you leave out the top 2 hitters there, becomes a 25% strikeout rate. So very targetable for Sale. Gives a little bit of upside to to the belief in his ceiling, his trajectory toward a ceiling score. There are a lot of good righties in this Mets lineup, though, so they will be looking for some of their typical power against. Sale, not at all targetable for power, though. 5.6% barrels, a sub-10-degree average launch, 30.7% hard hits, 86.5 miles an hour of exit velo. He's tremendous at everything, a 1.28% home run rate this year, so you can see the impact that's having even on Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos in the middle of the lineup. Not a great day to stack Mets. On the David Peterson side of the equation, last time out, just 3 2/3 against Philly, 4 earned runs in a bad outing, 4 strikeouts, no walks, but that wasn't a great day. The start before that faced Philly in Philly, 7 2/3, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, very strong start, gave up 4 hits, came away with a no decision, but also booked a quality start. Game before that, 4 earned in 4 1/3. He's been like on off the last 4 outings, but had been on a good stretch of quality starts prior to that, including an 11 strikeout game, gave up 1 earned run in 6 innings against Boston. So does have upside beyond what these numbers are for the season. A 3.08 ERA with a uglier 4.17 xFIP that kind of betrays it a little bit. A 19.1% strikeout rate, but this is mid-20s last 2 years. 26 last year, 27.8 the year before. So he's got more to give. 20 starts on the season of just kind of meh. 10.9% swinging is pretty good, but 27.2% CSW is not. He's given up too much hard hit, too much exit velo. A medium trajectory at 7.6 degrees average launch keeps his home runs in check. 1.65% home runs is very, very good. No multi-home run games through the season. He hasn't given one up in his last 4 starts, even with 2 of those being clunkers. So kind of a safe floor pitcher, but he's only mid-board. If he was in the 7s, he'd be more interesting. If he was in the 6s, he'd be elite in this spot. There are definitely some strikeouts, but this version of the Braves lineup falls to 22.5%. That's with Arcia and Urshela bringing things down slightly, and Ozzie Albies back in the lineup at 15%, so that's a bonus. But through the heart of the lineup, they're power bats, the guys you worry about, 26.2% strikeouts this season. There are some Ks available for David Peterson at a reasonable but high compared to a lot of like how he fits into the board price. Mets bats, not really in play. 1, the weather, 2, the Chris Sale of it. Some mix and match, some angle into the slate, leverage against a top end pitcher. I get it, and they are one of the better teams that you could do that with, but I really don't love the idea of targeting Chris Sale. Most of the time, that doesn't go well. But if you do it, Frankie Lindor, 5,800, 3,600, 31 home runs, 27 stolen bases, a 342 on base, 223 ISO. You just got to roll the dice that the back holds up. The idea is you're just out there playing through pain. Don't love it. Don't love it for, late game pinch hit maybe. Depends how the game script goes there, obviously. Jose Iglesias at 4,000, 2,700, just way overperforming his talent, but he continues to do it. 336, 379, 456. Creator runs 38% better than average. Vientos hit his 26th home run of the year in 436 plate appearances, and his price went down to 4,300. 3,000 on FanDuel. He's got a 253 ISO, 137 WRC plus. I legitimately do not know what he needs to do. 4,700 for Pete Alonso. His price also went down. 34 home runs on the season, a 225 ISO. Fire away with those two players. If you're building Met stacks, you are absolutely including them both in your stack. They're two tremendous right-handed power bats. Chris Sale's not good for targeting for home runs, but if anybody's going to hit one, it's going to be one of those two guys. JD Martinez could join that club. 4,200, 2,800. He's got 16 on the year. The 16 and the 173 ISO don't really fit the contact JD Martinez has made this year. 14.8% barrels and 45.2% hard hits. Typically should yield more output than that. So a little bit of bad luck in there. He's always playable. Tyrone Taylor, mix and match quality at 32.25. A little bit of home run power, a little bit of speed against the lefty, but this is not a typical lefty. Starlin Marte, same thing, 39.29. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed, but not your typical lefty on the mound. Francisco Alvarez, power hitting catcher. Has seen a little bit of an upswing late in the season. He's gotten up to 11 home runs, a 167 ISO. He's at league average for run creation. He is right-handed. He'd be in the mix for some shares if I was choosing to target Sale, but I'm not, so an 8-hitting catcher is a little bit unappealing. And then Harrison Bader's the same thing as Tyrone Taylor, just 4 spots later in the lineup. The Braves side, Michael Harris against the lefty off the top of the lineup. What's Mikey doing, lefty-lefty? .289, 314, 474 this season with a 185 ISO. Has been much better against same-handed pitching. So fire away with your Michael Harris shares. 16 home runs and 9 stolen bases. Pulling this decent-looking season together at the end of the day here. It's not going to be great, but over less than 500 plate appearances, fewer than 500 plate appearances is not terrible either. Ozzy Albies at 48, 3,000 is very cheap, but it has not been a good year for Ozzy. In his 413 plate appearances with some missed time, 9 home runs, 8 steals, 253, 303, 403. This is a player who has been much, much better than that. Last year, 280, 336, 513, a 233 ISO, 33 home runs, and 13 steals, for example. Ozuna, 5,300, 3,700, has 39 home runs on the season, a 252 ISO, shot at 40 home runs over the last couple of days here. Matty Olson, a shot at 30 home runs over the last couple of days. It would be nice to get both players over both thresholds. He's got a 217 ISO, a 118 WRC+. Plus. In a down season for him, those are still tremendous left-handed power hitting numbers at first base. Jorge Soler at 42-32 is definitely affordable for the upside. 6.09 in the home run model. Again, Peterson not overly targetable for home run power. There are hard hits and exit velo available, but again, a lot of its trajectory toward the ground. So the 1.65% home run's pretty real for Peterson. Last year that was 3.25 though on a similar launch angle. So that's just reflective of where the mistakes can go sometimes with Peterson. So if I'm stacking Braves against, Jorge Soler is probably part of my plans for such a cheap price. Ramon Laureano at 36.29 also hits the ball extremely hard. You can see his barrel rate aligns with the 3 guys above him. 41.3% hard hits, targetable. 10 home runs on the season, 8 steals in 288 plate appearances. Not bad totals. Gio Urshela is not much of a hitter. Sean Murphy's a tremendous bat at the catcher position, having a bad season, over 254 opportunities. Still has 9 home runs, but everything else has been kind of limited out of Murph this season. I do think you can go there if you're stacking Braves, but he's not the appealing bat that he would typically be last year, years prior, or next year. Orlando Garcia at the bottom, just a mix-and-match player with 17 home runs this year. Chris Sale, assuming the game plays Chris Sale, Braves bats, David Peterson, Mets bats. You could flip-flop Peterson and the Braves. They're pretty close in the middle there. Mets by far bringing up the bottom of that list. Marlins bats. Oops, those are the football projections. Got both Excel files open. We're gonna go tomorrow for football. We'll still do a quarterbacks, game overview, etc. Just in the interest of my sanity, I only want to have to rank things, maybe 3 times this week instead of doing it like 5 or 6 times like I did last week. And just haven't, I've got all the projections set. I was working on that all last night. Just want to, some pieces of news that I'm waiting on. Some things I'd love to see if we can get a little bit more secure before we dive in and do a show. Just timing-wise, it's going to work better tomorrow. So we'll do tomorrow, and then probably Friday for the football marathon show, just the game-by-gamer. It might end up being Saturday, but it would be in the evening. So I'd rather do it Friday, just Friday night, and just have it there, sitting there for people that want to watch it on Saturday. Reason being, I can't do it in the earlier afternoon. I mentioned it yesterday going to the Yankee game, and it's Paul Skeens starting. If Skeens doesn't start, maybe I end up flipping the tickets and not going and doing a show instead. But so far, so good with Skeens starting, so I'm looking forward to that on Saturday afternoon. But, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't done that, you'll know when these shows happen if you do. Check out our guys over at acemind.io. Doing great things with Sims and with optimizers. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, 20% off your first month over there. It is crucial to use those tools for football and for upcoming basketball, which is going to be here in about 3 weeks. Hockey season starts in 2 weeks from yesterday, or maybe today, at least for the Rangers opener. And then basketball, I'm not far behind that, so maybe a month out still for basketball opening day, but it'll be here before we know it. Marlins lineup, not any good at all, going up against Simeon Woods Richardson. The problem with him, he's decent for 4.0 ERA, a 4.54 xFIP, 20% strikeouts. Typically, we would consider this kind of a pitcher against the Marlins. He hasn't been bad for power at all, 36.3% hard hits. Sub 90 mile an hour exit velo is perfectly fine, or sub 89 mile an hour, 2.68% home runs. The issue with Woods Richardson has been the depth lately. I think they're just chasing an innings cap. Since the August 21st start where he went 5 innings, he hasn't completed the 5th inning in any of his 5 outings. He's pitched into the 5th, but 4 2/3 is where he's maxed out. He went just 5 innings exactly in 2 of his August starts. Limited outings. His deepest start since July has been a 7-inning outing against Cleveland on the 10th of August. Struck out 7 in a very good performance. 2 earned runs, 4 hits. But he's been a lot more limited for innings. They were letting him chase 5+ through July. And then it's been slowly capped, and it seems like it's been a little bit more aggressively capped now. So we're really probably only looking at 5 innings. In 5 innings, he could have a decent day for just 67, 76. I just think you don't have much ceiling beyond where he's projected. So I think you're getting to the median and not far beyond on a good day. And there is bad day downside for sure. Even without a lot of home runs against, he has given up some runs, and the xFIP says that he should be a little bit worse. Not a great pitcher for strike throwing, 9.5% swinging, 25.2% CSW. He walks a few. Just a really good target over here with a 24.6% strikeout rate and a collective 6.6% walk rate. Eddie Cabrera on the Marlins mound, 6,200, 8,100, 25.8% strikeouts is appealing at 6,200. But going up against the Twins team that's really good at run creating, really good at sequencing, pretty decent at drawing walks, with a pitcher who has a 12.4% walk rate, a 5.12 ERA, 27.7% swing CSW, a 1.39 WHIP, gives up a decent amount of power and premium contact, leading to a 3.54% home run. Just seems challenging. So I don't think it's the spot to go to him. If you wanted to throw a couple of low-owned darts at it for 62, as an SP2, especially with high upside, on the right day, he could come out and put up a 1-4 or better strikeout performance. It's just a little bit difficult to trust. Not my favorite spot. Last time out against the Dodgers, 2 1/3, 7 earned runs, 3 strikeouts, 5 walks. That's the kind of downside day you could be dealing with. Against the Nationals in the start before that, 6 innings, 2 runs, both of them unearned on 1 hit, struck out 9, walked just 1. That's the kind of upside day you could have. As a tiebreaker against the Phillies, the start before that one, 7 innings, just 3 hits, no runs, 6 strikeouts, just 1 walk. He's been better outside of that outlier 5-walk game against the Dodgers. He has been better since like mid-August with walks. Not really at the expense of much in terms of strikeouts either. Melted down against the Dodgers and had a meltdown against the Phillies back on August 14th. Gave up 6 earned runs, struck out 2, walked 4. The earned runs are going to come and go a lot around the walks. He's given up a fair amount of power as well, though, so that's where it comes from. He puts a couple guys on by the free pass, and then, say, Royce Lewis or Byron Buxton blasts one, and suddenly you're down 3-0, 4-0. But as a dart there for value, it's all right. It's in the bargain bin. It's playable. Even here, I guess, if you want to chase the strikeout upside, it's not safe. So if you're anti-risk, don't do it. Marlins lineup, Xavier Edwards off the top, 45, 3,000. Good slash line over 276 plate appearances. Stolen 30 bases, a 382 on base, creating runs 15% better than average. He's definitely in play if you're stacking Marlins. And as far as days to stack the Marlins, you could do worse than aligning against Woods Richardson here. So it's Edwards, Norby, Berger, Sanchez off the top. That's your 4-man on FanDuel, just directly straight line from the top. And then on DraftKings, if you want to stretch to 5, any one of the next couple of hitters is fine, but nobody's really appealing down lineup. Their 4 top hitters are their 1 through 4. Nobody's expensive. Everybody's got at least a little bit of power upside outside of Edwards, and he provides a ton of stolen base and on-base skills. So there's a trade-off there. Connor Norby for just 4,200, 3,100. Looks like a real power bat from the right side. 14.7% barrel so far. 31.1% strikeout rate, but 7.8% walks to offset it a little bit. And the idea that he could improve the walk rate. 305 on base, just okay, but a 235 ISO, 9 home runs in 167 chances is tremendous. 115 WRC plus. Jake Berger, their best proven power bat, with 28 home runs on the board this year and 554 plate appearances. A decent year for contact, but down from last season, down from the season before. 12.5% barrels, 47.2% hard hits, but still a 208 ISO, 103 WRC plus, and absolutely a lock for stacking if you're going to the Marlins. And then Jesus Sanchez somehow only cost $3,300 on DraftKings and $2,800 on FanDuel. He's got 18 home runs in 513 plate appearances. He's stolen 14 bases, 98 WRC plus, 171 ISO. I get that the results have been kind of mixed, but I mean, is his season truly DFS scoring wise all that far off of Jake Berger's season? Right, the 18 home runs and 14 steals, yeah, there's an imbalance there, but at least he claws back some of that home run difference. The average is very much the same. The on base is a negligible difference. The slug is, where the home runs differentiate. Same with the ISO. Sanchez arguably has seen worse luck, and he hits the ball as hard, if not harder. Lefty bat for just 3,300 in the outfield, 2,800 on FanDuel. Easy to go to against a medium grade righty pitcher. Woods Richardson does give up a lot of fly balls, 18.5 degree average launch, 8.4% barrel. So when he makes mistakes, they can get hit. It's just he's been good at inducing weak and medium even on some of those. So it's a mixed bag for a power target, but Jesus Sanchez there's a good power hitter lurking in there. I'm telling you guys. Jonah Bride at 3,000, mix and match quality, 9 home runs, a 114 WRC plus in 249 chances. Not a bad 5th man in. Griff Conine for 3,000 has hit the ball very hard, as has Derek Hill. Neither one of those guys is overly appealing. They both strike out 31% of the time. They're both sub 250 hitters, low on base percentages, hovering around or below the league average for run creation. A little bit of power showing in limited plate appearances for both guys, though. Hill adds a little bit of stolen base upside. So as mix and match 5th men in go on DraftKings, it's fine. If you're building a bunch of Marlins stacks on FanDuel and you want to get away from the top 4, you can grab a couple of these guys down lineup. They're not, well, they are pretty terrible, but for the Marlins, they're not completely terrible. Otto Lopez, 32-27, fills 4 positions cheap on FanDuel, 6 home runs, 19 steals in 416 plate appearances. Not exactly great totals, but mix and match quality. Johnny Peretta, no real appeal in the catcher spot, over 30 plate appearances so far. Oh, come on. Why is he not coming up? Oh, it's JHO. I think I did this the other day with this player. 4 home runs this year in AAA in 195 plate appearances. Decent slash line, 297, 405, 424. So maybe like a good average on base catcher without power. 2,200. I guess if you're stacking up a ton of Marlins and you want to go to the catcher in the 9 spot, maybe the kid's got a little bit of a correlated scoring bat and could wrap back around to your top 4. So actually, that becomes a little bit appealing now that I think about it. Since we were searching for a 5th man, why not take the $2,200 catcher and then just average it to a $3,700 price, and you get him correlated the last 3 times through the lineup, you get him correlated with the top 4 that we want anyway. And I'm telling you right now, nobody's doing that. That's an appealing way to play the Marlins on DraftKings if you're determined to play them. They are low end though. This team has a 3.67 implied run total, so don't get too excited. On the Twins side, Edward Julian is interesting in the leadoff role. He's a high strikeout player, so he could be a target for Edward Cabrera, but he's also a high walk hitter. 11% walks this year. Last year, 15-7. Both years, 30+% strikeouts. Puts good bat on ball. 10.1% barrels this year. Last year, 13-1 with a 44.9% hard hit rate. He was better last year. Limited plate appearances this season. 290 opportunities, 8 home runs, 6 steals. 85 WRC plus limits him a little bit, but that's kind of why he's so cheap at second base at the top. So for different reasons than Gleyber Torres, but in a similar vein, he's just cheap and fills second base on either side. So I do think you can go there, and he's probably got more on base appeal and correlated scoring today than he might otherwise, and he does have a lurking power bat there. Not a bad option. Carlos Correa, 4,900, 3,300, not appropriately priced on DraftKings. 13 home runs in 352 plate appearances, a 201 ISO, 152 WRC plus, tremendous contact numbers, super low strikeout at 16.8%, 10.2% walks, going to give all kinds of problems to Cabrera. Trevor Larnach from the left side, tons of power and premium contact, 10.4% barrels, 45.4% hard hits, 15 home runs in 390 plate appearances, a 179 ISO is just okay. We could definitely do better for power and probably will. 120 WRC plus. It's a terrific option for $3,000 in the outfield. I don't understand why the Twins are so cheap. Byron Buxton and Royce Lewis have gotten a little bit more expensive, I think. 46, 48 for those two players, but still very cheap for the quality that you get there. 11.5% and 13.5% barrel rates this year. 16 home runs in 304 for Buxton, or for Lewis. 17 home runs in 373 for Buxton. 234 and 241 ISOs respectively. 20 and 40% better than average for run creation in their limited opportunities this year. Carlos Santana for 36.29 is absurdly priced. 22 home runs in 572 plate appearances. 10% better than average for run creation. Strikes out 17.1% of the time and walks 10.5% of the time. Another player is absolutely going to give Cabrera fits today. Willie Castro, 36.28, good correlated scoring option, multi-position on FanDuel, not so much on DraftKings. Better option on the blue site for sure. 111 WRC plus, 337 on base. Brooks Lee, 24-28, mix and match at best at shortstop, and Christian Vasquez at the catcher spot, not really appealing. 7 home runs and 304 for him. Twins bats. Marlins bats. Edward Cabrera on DraftKings. Woods Richardson, I just think you're limited to 5 innings. If you want to target the Marlins again for 5 innings and with a decent amount of win equity, 6,700, he's capable of paying that off, but I just think you're going to be limited to this plus the win bonus. Both these lineups in, both these awful teams. Again, with 2 pretty bad pitchers on the mounds, these teams are still well under 4 runs. It's a weird game. Jose Suarez, over 47 and a third, 2 starts, a lot of relief work, has a 6.08 ERA with a 4.39 xFIP. He's walked 11.5%, so he's not any good. 23.4% strikeouts this year, giving up just a 2.29% home run. That's good, but a lot of that comes at max effort out of the bullpen. So, you kind of see what you get from him. So it is a decent chunk of multi-inning, but most of his multi-innings are 2, maybe 3. It's not like somebody who comes out and pitches 5 out of the pen throughout those relief appearances this season. So I do still think a lot of it is, fairly max effort, and he was only pitching every few days as if he was a starter anyway. So limited option at best. 5,900 on FanDuel. I don't know that you necessarily have upside to the quality start. He's not done it throughout the season. Maxed out at 5 innings in his most recent outing. That was a 5-inning start, full true start against Houston at Houston. Pretty good performance. 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 unearned run over, and 3 hits. Faced 21 hitters. So if you extrapolate against this team, there's the idea that a successful day goes out to 6 innings, or at least 5 plus. He's probably a better DraftKings option at 6, where you're just chasing the win. Does have a little bit of win upside against Davis, with his team going up against Davis Martin. But I question the true nature of the depth. He went 4 innings in the appearance before that, also against Houston. Blanked them over 5 hits for 4 innings and struck out 5 in that one as well. It's an appealing target. I will absolutely give him that much. I think he's playable. You know what's a good tiebreak on this one is, what does the popularity on this pitcher look like? Don't really care what it looks like on FanDuel. Let me jump to DraftKings. Ooh, 510. We got to hit the gas pedal a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of what I was suspecting. He's the highest owned value pitcher by a pretty wide margin on that DraftKings slate. The other $6,000 guys land just barely into double digits, and he's another half again on top of that. He's owned similarly to everybody not named Zach Gallen, apparently. Did the Braves game scratch? Did that postpone already? Doesn't look like they have ownership on. Yep, there you go. Oh, shit. Tomorrow's game is also postponed. The Mets and the Braves are playing a doubleheader on Monday. I'm glad I took Frankie Lindor out of my lineup. Yowza. Mets, Braves, PPD today and tomorrow. Makeup doubleheader to decide playoffs on Monday. That's going to shake things up in fantasy leagues. Not sure if you get the opportunity to open things up and change your lineup again on a Monday. Ours would. I don't know if we're going to allow it, but it definitely would open up on Yahoo. Interesting. All right, so Chris Sale off the board. That's what I picked up when I noticed how highly owned Zach Gallen is in these projections. So scratch the Mets, scratch the Braves, scratch Chris Sale, scratch David Peterson. Zach Gallen, by far the highest owned pitcher on that DraftKings slate. And then it's the obvious guys, and then it's Jose Suarez. So my take on him is just kind of, might give you the 5 for 6,000. There are comparable options, and he's going to be very popular in this role. So if you're considering somebody from the bargain bin, can I sell you an Eric Fede for 300 more at Coors Field? We'll find out. Can I sell you an Edward Cabrera, even though I just kind of talked down about that spot, for 100 less with his strikeout ceiling? Or excuse me, for 200 more with his strikeout ceiling? I was comparing him to Davis Martin, not Suarez. There's some man-for-man appeal there with Suarez being as highly owned as he is by comparison. So that's interesting. Definitely a inflection point on this slate for sure. Weirdly, in this low-end White Sox-Angels game with Jose Suarez and Davis Martin. Martin's gone 46 1/3 over 9 starts, 21.3%. Strikeout rate is not terrible. It's around the average. 4.27 ERA, 4.31 xFIP, again around the average. A little bit above average for walks, 8.9%. A very inflated 1.40 whip. Has been good at inducing swinging strikes in the show so far, though. That's kind of interesting at 11.5%. Stuff Plus likes the Arsenal, 104.7, is well above average by Stuff Plus. It's given up an 8.8% barrel rate, but on a decent launch angle, so it hasn't burnt him for home runs. Moderately playable, maybe. 7,100, he projects out as the better of these two. Slightly worse of these two options. I'm sorry. More expensive on the FanDuel slate. Worse matchup between these two options. Martin last time out. Where is he? 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks against these same Angels. 3 inning, 5 earned runs, 6 hit, 4 strikeout game against the Guardians is no good, but a 6 inning game at Fenway. September 6th, went 6, gave up 1 earned run on 3 hits. Just 3 strikeouts, but we don't need a ton of strikeout upside. I think he's as much on the board as Jose Suarez is on the other side for slightly more and lower ownership. He's just as good. Or just as bad. Angels bats are definitely in play against Martin on the other side of that equation. But this is, I said it at the beginning of the show, this is just such an ugly, it is a 4-corner spot in which you could play the bats against these pitchers easily from either side. But both of these teams kind of suck. I greatly prefer the Angels in that equation, but not to the point where I want to run out and roster them at a sub-4 run total. At the same time, I don't really want to roster Davis Martin or Jose Suarez. So it's kind of a yes or no 4-corner. It's so clunky to analyze something like this because it's like I just literally said it's kind of a yes or no to all 4 things. You're welcome. Click the like button, subscribe. So dumb. That really is the nature of this game. Favorite thing in this game would be the Angels bats, I think, for me, considering where Suarez is owned. If Suarez wasn't popular, it would be him. Taylor Ward's playable at 42, 3,000. He's got 25 home runs, 186 ISO, 115 WRC plus as their best or second best bat all season. 23 home runs and 30 stolen bases for Neto, who I keep on referring to as like the lead man in that second tier of shortstops for a fair price on both sites. 43-33 is not a bad option for a guy with a 194 ISO, 112 WRC plus who also steals bases. Nolan Shanuel, good on base option, 344 on base, 13 home runs, 10 stolen bases, a 104 WRC plus out of him. Kevin Pillar, 4,000, 2,700, a veteran with a little bit of right-handed pop in that bat, but not really, not exactly squaring the ball up consistently this year. 8 home runs, 12 steals. He can get involved, but he's pretty low end, 97 WRC plus on the year. Logan O'Hoppe is still hitting the ball very, very hard for a catcher. 3,600 is a good price. Strikes out nearly 30% of the time, though. He's got 20 home runs on the year, but only a 167 ISO, 97 WRC plus. Kind of mixed results for all that good contact. Wagaman, 40% hard hits over his 52 plate appearances, 2 home runs on the board, not completely uninteresting, 212 ISO. You can mix and match your way to some shares of him for a cheap price at third base. Matt Thaiss, a second catcher in the lineup, is also cheap, 2,700. He's made good contact in 170 plate appearances, but really has very little to show for it. Does have the ability to drive the ball, but mix and match at the absolute outside. Gustavo Campero at 23, 2,000. Decent little 29 plate appearances. He's stolen 2 bases, but really hasn't been all that productive yet. Jack Lopez at 21 cross sites multi-position on FanDuel. Has a home run on the board in 53 plate appearances. I get mixed up between which of these guys are which. Yeah, Lopez is the non-prospect 31-year-old. Don't worry about him. And then Campero. Yeah, Campero is 27, going on 28. Oh, no, just turned 27. 27 in 5 days. Happy birthday. I think I said happy birthday to him the other day when we looked him up. In Double-A this year, 14 home runs and 29 stolen bases, but that's playing as a 26-year-old in Double-A, kind of stretching it. So maybe a little bit of raw skill for Campero for the price. Switch hitter to mix in against Davis Martin. If you're stacking Angels, you could do worse, but you could probably also do better. Miguel Vargas at the top of the White Sox lineup, 25-26, has 5 home runs and 3 steals, but also slashing 164, 258, 280 with a 55 WRC+. Luis Robert's having a terrible season, 10.2% barrels, 40.7% hard hits, striking out 33.2% of the time. That's up like 5 points over last year, slashing 224, 276, 379. Ouch. 14 home runs, 22 steals. Probably the reason my dynasty team's not in first place. Him and Adolis Garcia. 35-28 for Andrew Benintendi. He got up to 19 home runs, but it was totally deceptive. There's nothing to really see here. Andrew Vaughn at 32-28 is a more legitimate power hitter. 19 home runs for him in more plate appearances, a 162 ISO. Seems weird to say, but he makes much better contact. 9.7% barrels, 42.9% hard hits, and sustainable proof of that over the last 3 years where Benintendi has never made good contact. Lenyn Sosa at second base, mix and match 41.5% hard hits is okay. Average strikeout rate doesn't really walk, so you're getting at least well-struck balls in play. It's amounted to 6 home runs, a .088 ISO, and a 70 WRC plus over 348 plate appearances. Brian Ramos is an interesting hitter, 44.4% hard hits so far in 87 plate appearances in the show. He's hit 2 home runs, but he's also coming in with bad results, 188, 241, 313, from a kid whose job it is to just drive the ball, hit line drives, and get on base. He's not really a power bat, but he is supposed to be one of those Jose Miranda kind of guys. Corey Lee, a low-end catcher for 23-24. He's hit 11 cheap home runs this year, and congratulations. Dom Fletcher for 22-21 has given us nothing over 221 plate appearances. Same thing's true for Jacob Maya in the last spot. Regardless of how low priced these guys are, they're very, very bad and very, very limited. Angels bats. Jose Suarez, despite the popularity. Davis Martin. Really, don't play the White Sox, but you can. They're just bad. All right, let's see if I can sell Eric Fede at Coors Field. Let me grab the lineups first. I've been pretty anti-Fede for most of the season. So this is just kind of okay-ish pitcher against a bad team with a lot of strikeouts against a righty. And at least some performances earlier in the year that would suggest that Fede could go find some strikeout total. He's only 6,600 on DraftKings. He's 83 on FanDuel. That's a lot more challenging. For 66, as the most highly projected DraftKings SP2 option from the bargain bin, I could probably get you into a Fede today. 6 innings in his most recent start. He only gave up 1 earned run, struck out 3. Struck out 3 in the start before that. 5 earned runs at Toronto. Just 1 strikeout against Seattle, but only gave up 1 earned run over 4 2/3. Came away with a loss. Came away with a loss against the Yankees. Gave up 4 earned, but struck out 8 over 5 1/3. Struck out 7 Twins over 6 innings, just 1 earned run. The premium strikeout games were early in the season. He had an 11K game against the Twins, a 9 strikeout game against the Rays, 8 against the Brewers, 7 against the Cubs. It diminished through the season. Right now, he's sitting at a 20.5% strikeout rate. But again, this Rockies team does feed righties a little bit of strikeout upside at 27.9% combined for this confirmed version of the Rockies lineup. 3.38 ERA, but a 4.23 xFIP. This is the real Eric Fede. But he's been getting away with it a little bit more this year than in years past. 7.6% barrels, pretty decent at limiting hard hits, inducing weak and medium contact. A believable 2.85% home run rate. No real issues with walks over his 30 starts. 170 innings is medium quality depth. He finished the 6th a bunch of times. He finished the 7th a handful of times earlier in the year. Hasn't gotten through 6 in, he gave a 6 in his last start. Prior to that, August 25th, he gave a 6. Not bad. Hasn't given us more than 6 since July 22nd. He came up with 6 1/3. That was against the Rangers. But we haven't gotten through 7 in a while. But really, at these prices, at 66, the DraftKings price, we really don't need him to get through more than 5 or 6. Book the win. Decent upside for his team to win this game. But you've got Austin Gomber on the other side, who, again, it's kind of similar to yesterday. This isn't a good pitcher, but it is a pitcher who can give us innings. It is a pitcher who can find a couple of strikeouts against a scuffling Cardinals team. Last time out, Gomber only went 2 against Arizona, but Arizona gets everybody. They're literally the team that always is the example of this. 5 earned runs, 1 strikeout, 1 walk, 3 home runs allowed. That was a disaster. That was in Arizona. A decent game in Wrigley the start before that, though. 6 innings. He did give up 9 hits, which was problematic, but only 2 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, and a walk. Start before that at Atlanta. Oh, excuse me. Those 2 games were at Coors Field. I'm sorry. I was reading this wrong. So that's a decent Coors start. That's emblematic of what he could do today. 6 innings, a bunch of hits, but he limits runs, doesn't give up a homer, 4 or 5 strikeouts. Austin Gomber can do that for you for $5,500, $6,500. Between the 2 pitchers on FanDuel, Austin Gomber's easily the better buy. Fede gives you more strikeout upside, but Gomber gives you equal ability to chew up some innings for the much cheaper price, and you're really only looking at the free square, and the number of times that Fede's truly going to run away with a huge strikeout total here are pretty limited. Gomber had a very strong start at Atlanta on September 5th. He went 8 innings, struck out 6. Pretty sure we played him that day. 1 earned run on 5 hits. A couple of 4 strikeout games, a handful of earned runs against Baltimore at home, but 6 innings, 3 earned runs against Baltimore with 4 strikeouts at Coors Field. It's another decent start. If you got that for 5,500 today, you're all right, especially if they can manage to win the game. That's obviously a big part of the question. But it's not a terrible price to play Austin Gomber at 55 out of the bargain bin on DraftKings with low expectations as a tournament play in a lot of lineups. If you're building one lineup and you're putting all your savings on it, first off, don't do that. Second of all, Austin Gomber probably not your guy, but a big tournament play. Of course, it's Coors Field, so it's more about bats. Vegas will tell you that with 5+ implied runs on both sides of this one. Cards coming in, Mason Wynn at the top, better real-life shortstop than a DFS option, but 15 home runs, 11 steals. He's moderately playable and gets a little bit of a bump from Coors. Still no real Coors tax on anybody on this team on the DraftKings slate. Little bit of a Coors Field tax on FanDuel. 34 for Wynn, 35 for Donovan, especially 34 for this version of Paul Goldschmidt. Little high. Goldie's the only one above 5,000 on DraftKings. Seems pretty playable over there. They're a good value stack on DraftKings. Donovan for 45 with second base eligibility, not bad on DraftKings. 35 is a little bit more expensive on the FanDuel slate. 137 ISO. He's a decent run creator. He's good at getting on base. So in Coors Field, that plays up a little bit. Just put the ball in play a few times, reach first base. Maybe you walk once or twice. Correlate with Goldie Arenado, with the catcher with Jordan Walker. Reasonable options down the list here, but it is a thin Cardinals team this year. Goldschmidt at 51.34 is playable with a 9.65 in the home run model. He's at 21 this year, but it's been a minute. 301 on base, a 162 ISO. Decent contact still, especially by comparison to Arenado, but it's been a bad season for Goldie. Arenado just 3.3% barrels and 30.7% hard hits. 16 home runs on the year, a 123 ISO, 101 WRC+. Ivan Herrera, a $4,800 catcher, 3,200 on FanDuel. Mix and match quality. Not a bad stick, 8.2% barrels and 41.5% hard hits, slashing 292, 359, 406. Just not a lot of power, or at least not results-wise. 4 home runs, a 114 ISO most especially. 118 WRC+, though. He's been a good run creator, good contributor for them. Jordan Walker at 36, I continue to believe. 5 home runs on the board, a 168 ISO, 68 WRC+, especially in Coors Field for just 3,600. By the contact, by the quality that we saw last year that I've talked about 3 or 4 times over the last week or two. Definitely interested at 3,600 at Coors Field. That's a misprice. He should at least be 4,000. I'm not even asking for a high price. I get that he hasn't been really good at all this year, but he's a much better player than this. And you've got real contact. Yeah, a lot of strikeouts, medium walk rate, but going up against a limited pitcher. Like the spot. Thomas Segisi at 31.29. You can mix and match your way there. 35 pretty mediocre plate appearances so far. Pedro Pajes, another catcher in this lineup. He's cheap, but kind of limited. 6 home runs and 201 plate appearances. Nothing much to speak of in the line. 3,700 for Michael Ciani, who's just a bat-on-ball contact Nicky Lopez kind of a hitter, and not really seeing much results for that. No, thank you. On the Rocky side, retiring Charlie Blackmon, 4,800, 3,400, 11 home runs, a 155 ISO, 91 WRC+, playable, but also very, very skippable up top. Ezequiel Tovar, Brenton Doyle are the 2 most appealing Rockies bats, and then you get to the later power bats with Michael Talia, Sam Hilliard, Jacob Stallings, Nolan Jones. There's some interesting players on the Rockies now. Tovar has 25 home runs, 6 stolen bases, and 94 WRC+ with a 197 ISO. McMahon Doyle 22 and 29 with a 184 ISO. McMahon with 20 home runs from the left side at third base for a fair price at 51.35. Not bad. The Rockies are somehow more expensive than the Cards are in this game, though. Talia has hit 25 home runs in just 436 plate appearances. Got a monster 246 ISO. 3 true outcomes hitter for sure at 32.3% Ks, but 11.2% walks, and just mashes the ball when he makes contact. Sam Hilliard, though, don't sleep on him. Talked about him yesterday. I've mentioned him a few times recently. 9 home runs and 143 plate appearances, 270 ISO from the left side, 14.6% barrels, 50+% hard hit so far, with the ability to do that demonstrated over time in limited samples. Sam Hilliard's not bad for 4,500, 3,300. Jacob Stallings at 5,032. Makes decent contact, 40+% hard hits last year, 7.4% barrels and 35.2% hard hits this year, 9 home runs and 275 chances, a 194 ISO. He's playable. It's not ideal, but he's playable. Kind of high priced on DraftKings, though, at $5,000 as a catcher. I get that it's Coors Field, but that feels a little bit clunky. Nolan Jones at 47.31, highly playable. He's up above the Mendoza line, 209, 309, 301, 3 home runs, 5 steals, and 279 plate appearances. Way off the mark from last year, but we saw the quality from last year that this player can provide. 44.5% hard hits still, 12.5% walk rate. Definitely still in play for me. Aaron Schunk at 33.25, 2 home runs in 83 plate appearances. Cheap eligibility in the infield from a Coors Field lineup. This goes Cardinals bats, Rockies bats, got to do that. And then Fede Gomber in that order. But I do think it's an oddly playable four corners game given how cheap the pitchers are and the fact that they're not really going to draw that much popularity against two pretty gettable, pretty bad teams with the ability, again, to not have great dominant starts by any means, but 5-6 clean innings with a little bit of upside for more out of each of these guys is definitely within reach. And they're appropriately priced for it on DraftKings. That's the ugly looking one, 83, but even that is not completely unreasonable. It's just not a total value. If you need total value, you go to the other side for Gomber. I mentioned that's what I ended up doing last night. Whoops. Labs is jumping all around, removing that Braves game. Got the time. Oh, that one's in already. And we're not on that game. Rangers and A's. Neither of these lineups is in on Labs yet. So Brady Basso for 75.68 has a 20.8% strikeout rate over 19 1/3 in 5 starts, just walking 5.2% so far. Pretty tidy 3.70 xFIP against his 2.33 ERA. The issue comes in around stuff plus if you care about what the shape of the arsenal looks like as it moves through space and time, but he's seen good results with it. 12.5% swinging strikes, 30.1% CSW in limited action, a 109 whip. He's been decent at limiting home runs and keeping the ball down and missing barrels so far. A little bit of hard hit, not that much exit velo in there, and again, it's a very small sample. Last time out, he started against the Cubs. He gave up 3 earned runs and 4 2/3 on 6 hits, but he struck out 5 in a short start. 2 strikeouts and a walk in 5 1/3 against the White Sox, but gave up no runs in 5 hits. If you put those 2 starts together, it evens out to something pretty good. 6 innings of clean ball against the, at that time and currently surging Detroit Tigers. 22 hitters faced to give up 3 hits, struck out 6, walked 1, no runs. It's a good start. If you get that today, tremendous. And then prior to that, he hadn't pitched in the show since June, so we won't really talk about those numbers. Over 12 starts, 16 appearances, 67 2/3 in AAA this year. He's got a 26.4% strikeout rate and a 7.5% walk rate. 5.19 ERA with a 4.26 xFIP. That's pitching as a 26-year-old in AAA, but at least is encouraging for the money at 68, especially on FanDuel. Probably your go-to bargain bin option on the FanDuel slate. Don't love the upside for a quality start. Probably looking at 5 and change, and then comes out before finishing the 6. But at least we did get it once, just 3 starts ago. Pitched into the 6th inning in the White Sox game. So there's at least the idea of that kind of depth if all goes well against the Rangers, and they've really been scuffling this year. So it's at least targetable. It's at least playable. It's worse on DraftKings, oddly, at 75, just with the way that fits into the slate overall, but it's playable there. It's just he's higher priced than all these guys. On the Rangers side, Cody Bradford, legitimately good. 3.59 ERA with a 3.81 xFIP, a sub-1 whip over his 12 starts, 72 2/3, 23% strikeouts, a minuscule 3.5% walk rate. Last time out, 7 innings against Toronto, 6 strikeouts, 5 hits, no earned runs. Guess who got to him the start before that, though? I think we were on the bats in this one. It was the Arizona Diamondbacks. Shocker. 8 earned runs in 3 2/3, 9 hits, 4 strikeouts, 3 home runs allowed in that game. Diamondbacks are just good. Prior to that start, he had been on a very strong run of 5 starts. All quality starts, at least 6 innings, finished the 7th twice. 2 8-strikeout games in that stretch. Had the game where he's chasing a no-hitter. He's good. He is definitely legitimately good $8,800 is not a bad price. $8,900 not a bad price to face the Oakland A's. 23.9% for this projected version of the A's lineup as far as the strikeout rate goes. There are definitely some Ks there. The issue for me comes down a little bit around some of these monster home run numbers. Brent Rooker and Shea Langoliers most specifically, but even Lawrence Butler and a lefty-lefty, 8.86, a 6.5 for J.J. Bleday, who's been good against lefties this year. Zach Geloff at 7.74 is not nothing. Daz Cameron, who's hit the ball exceptionally hard so far, at 6.24 from the right side, not nothing. And Bradford's given up a 9.5% barrel, 3.48% hard hits on a fly ball trajectory at 18.5 degrees. Overall, he's been good at limiting hard hits and inducing weak and medium, 35.7% hard hits. 89 miles an hour of exit velo, though, you can definitely get the ball up and out against the lefty. So the A's not totally off the board. Bradford not totally safe for the money. I do think if I had to decide, you're up in the observatory of the Empire State Building and all of a sudden somebody opens a window and threatens to push you out it if you get this question wrong, then you probably lean Cody Bradford over the A's bats. But if you roll this 100 times, they get him 30 times. Up top, Marcus Semien, 46-32, has 22 home runs, a 152 ISO. Bad season for him, okay season overall. He's affordable at second base. He remains still one of the most playable second basemen. You just got to close your eyes, hold your nose, whatever it is when you look at the slash line, really. Everything else is fine. Josh Smith, 41-3000, still a correlated scoring option. Not a ton of individual output. Medium strikeout, medium walk. He's okay, but he's not going to win you a slate on his own most days. And he occupies shortstop in a weird way on DraftKings. Much more playable on FanDuel at either third or in the outfield, in my opinion. The hell is this? Don't know that movie. Wyatt Langford, 42-32, having a good final stretch here. He's up to 13 home runs, 16 steals, a 150 ISO, 105 WRC plus. It finally clicked for Wyatt Langford late in the season. His last month or so has been pretty tremendous. 9.2% barrels, 43.8% hard hits. It's going to come out looking like an okay rookie year and a lot to build on. Adolis Garcia, I mentioned him just before. He's at 221, 281, 390, 88 WRC plus, a 170 ISO, 23 homers and 11 steals. There's your problem, Dynasty team. Him and Lubob. Yeesh. 31-29 for Nathaniel Lowe. Definitely playable with his on-base skills. Another good correlated scoring option. They should probably consider flip-flopping him and Josh Smith in this regular version of the lineup. Lowe's got a little bit more true power upside, but it's not that big a difference that it really matters in the 5 spot. He's at 14 home runs. He's got a 124 ISO, 39.1% hard hits. Carson Kelly, a legitimate bat in the catcher spot, 37.8% hard hits, 6.5% barrels for just 3,100, 8 home runs and 301 plate appearances. Not bad. Justin Foscue at 21-22 makes a match quality and no results so far. Leody Taveras, 29-27, moderately interesting for a cheap outfielder, I guess. 12 home runs, 22 steals, but pretty inconsistent, 16% worse than average grading runs. Jonathan Ornelas, just cheap, down toward the bottom of the lineup. You can mix and match your way toward him. He's got speed and in 368 plate appearances with the AAA team this year, just 9 stolen bases, slashing 251, 322, 326. Last year he had 15 steals, 8 home runs. Year before 14 and 14. So kind of just a middle of the road kind of a player, kind of a Leody Taveras type. On the A side, I went through it real quick, but Lawrence Butler off the top, 22 home runs, 18 steals, solid 323 on base, holding down the leadoff spot pretty effectively for correlated scoring when he's not producing individually, but a lot of good counting stats, 239 ISO, 135 WRC plus. Brent Rooker having a tremendous year, 38 homers, 11 steals, a 271 ISO, 164 WRC plus. It's been one of the most productive bats in baseball, full stop. Shea Langoliers, 4,000, 2,800, 11.77 in the home run model. He's got 28 on the year, 225 ISO. Tremendous right-handed power bat from the catcher position for a cheap price, hitting third potentially. Not a bad option. These guys are all high to medium strikeout. Could help Cody Bradford have a day, but all of those guys can put bat on ball with quality. So a lot of danger there. J.J. Bleday, home runs on the board at 200 ISO, 122 WRC plus. We looked at him just recently in lefty-lefty. If memory serves, he's been decent this year against lefties, but has been, throughout his career history, not good against lefties. Zach Geloff, 34-28, 17 home runs, 24 steals, a 156 ISO is limited, and an 85 WRC plus is limited. But the counting stats from an affordable second baseman on both sides, there's appeal there. 9.1% barrels is appealing. A lot of strikeouts, medium walk rate, not great, but this and this keep him alive for DFS. If he can manage to get himself on base more often, he'd be much more appealing. If he was just at these numbers, 27.3% strikeouts, 8.7% walks, he'd be a positive run creator probably. Daz Cameron, we talked about the secret with Daz Cameron just the other day. I don't think he's done anything at all since then. But just to remind, 8.6% barrels, 50% hard hits so far this year in his 180 plate appearances. It's amounted to a 201, 261, 323 slash line that's just completely terrible. 5 home runs and 5 stolen bases in that sample is just okay as far as the output goes. 69 WRC plus is really, really bad. It means you're 31% worse than average creating runs. But he is hitting the ball hard against the lefty. Sneaky. Little 6.24 in the home run model for 2,500, 3,100 across sites. You can take that option if you're stacking A's. Tyler Nevin, 28-24, mix and match quality with 7 home runs and 269 plate appearances. Darrell Arnaiz is actually more interesting. He's got a truly decent bat. He hasn't shown it in the majors yet. Over 127 plate appearances. He's been pretty bad. 52% worse than average creating runs. But decent on base and batting average throughout the career in the minor leagues. Just seems like a bat on ball, get to first base, kind of a correlated scoring player. But interesting enough for those cheap prices, especially the dead min on FanDuel at third base. Even if you plunked him in at shortstop, if you're paying the min price, you can go to a low-end shortstop. There's an offset somewhere as you go down the price board. Jake Wilson, also along those lines, averaged a little bit of on-base skills throughout the minors. Neither one of these guys has shown anything in the show yet, but Wilson's been the slightly more productive of the two over fewer plate appearances. This probably truthfully goes Cody Bradford, Rangers bats, A's bats, Brady Basso, but I'm going to move Basso up, and I'm going to say it's Bradford, Basso, Rangers bats, A's bats. Think I'm okay doing that. Both teams under 4 runs. The idea that the Rangers are coming in at just a 3.70 implied total should give some decent support to the idea that Basso's at least going to be okay here. I mean, not gonna be, but like has that lane that I'm not completely crazy. It's an interesting game. You know? Another kind of ugly on both sides, kind of interesting all around kind of a game. 2 to go. Zach Gallen, see if he can succeed where both Erod and Brandon Pfaadt failed and actually have a good game against the pretty gettable Giants. Gallen comes in at 9,800, carrying a pretty decent projection with a 3.74 ERA and an exactly matching 3.74 xFIP. He just is who he looks like. 24.2% strikeout rate over 142 innings in 27 starts this year. 10.4% swinging, not bad. Medium high walk rate, 8.7%. Like at 9%, I'm going to call it high and ugly. So you're just under that threshold, but still targetable walk rate at worst. The Giants have a few hitters who can definitely draw a walk. They've got some power to threaten Gallen with. Overall this season, he's been pretty good at checking power, though. 11.9 degrees is a manageable launch angle. 7.3% barrels is just a few mistakes in there. Over the threshold for hard hits, just under it for exit velo, but we don't really care as much on that kind of a trajectory. That is getting up. 11.9 degrees is not a everything is going into the ground kind of an average trajectory, but it's still decent. 2.17% home runs is maybe a little on the lucky side, but still believable with that kind of contact. But he's gettable for power. It's just a really good target for K's on the other side. 26.8% strikeout rate for this projected version of the Giants lineup. Let's see if we got it confirmed. Still no confirmed. So especially with Sale coming off the board, Gallen for one is going to get very, very popular according to that RG projection that I mentioned before, or the spot that he was on their list anyway, not the actual number. But I do think he's highly playable here. Mason Black on the other side, just looking like a target for some of these fantastic Diamondbacks bats. I expect they're going to be the most popular non-Coors team. They might even exceed the popularity of the Coors teams. You have some monster home run numbers to work with. The top 6 checks out at a 12.31 on average. Pretty good. Then you also have today's home run pick of the day just because he was outside of the top 6, and I wanted to give him some credit. Eugenio Suarez at 9.86. but monster power lurking here for the Diamondbacks. Mason Black has given up a 10.8% barrel rate, 90 miles an hour of exit velo on a 19.4 degree average launch, and a 4.61% home run rate so far in the show. 5.88 ERA with a 5.01 xFIP, striking out just 18.1, walking 6.6. Seems like a target to me. 5 2/3, pretty good game against Kansas City his last time out, though. 4 hits, no runs, 4 strikeouts, and a walk for 65-62. I don't think you're getting that game again. You're probably getting something more along the lines of one of these 4 earned runs in 4 and change innings with a home run on the board, a few strikeouts, but not a good game. That's basically every other game in his game log so far. It's been limited. This is very telling that this isn't much better than that. Stuff Plus doesn't really like the arsenal if you need a little bit more to pile on. So I think we're just really considering Diamondbacks bats, and we've got other similarly priced pitchers against worse teams to tangle with. If you're going to the Giants against Gallen, which makes some sense to me, you can take them as just a contrarian angle into the slate and just target that monster ownership on Gallen, who is, on a bad day, definitely gettable. 4 earned runs last time, 5 earned runs back on August 30th against the Dodgers. Several 4 and 5 earned runs games in here. Peaked at 6 earned runs, 7 runs allowed in that game. Hasn't completely melted down all season. But if you get some of those with a big scoring event, you could be okay here. Mike Yastrzemski's very cheap at 35 for a guy with 10.2% barrels, 41.2% hard hits. 18 homers and a 208 ISO over 460 plate appearances. I'll take those results from a reasonably priced lefty power bat. Elliot Ramos at just 4,300 has 22 home runs at 203 ISO. Monster power from the right side. Definitely could sign up for that. 14.9% barrels, 47.2% hard hits from such a cheap hitter. Very intriguing. Lamont Wade at 29, 3,000. 8 home runs, 386 on base. Walks a tremendous amount of the time at 15.8 to throw at the 8.7 that Gallen's been walking hitters with. That could be a problematic hitter for Zach Gallen. Matt Chapman, 5.71 in the home run model for just 4,500. He's giving you 27 home runs and 15 stolen bases. Getting on base at a 333 clip, a 215 ISO. You get a 217 ISO out of Mike Conforto from the left side. 20 home runs for him in 476 plate appearances this year. He's very cheap as well. Giants are a good contrarian option here. It's just I prefer the Gallen side given the strikeout upside. But with all the weight of ownership that's going to go to him now, I could definitely get into some Giants bats on their own. And again, as a hedge position, I think it's almost mandatory. You're going to want to have some Giants bats across a full portfolio of lineups. It's not to say that they're the best target if you want to build a contrarian lineup in one lineup, but they well might be. Patrick Bailey just okay, 41.7% hard hits is the take-home point there, but 436 plate appearances, just a 107 ISO this year, 8 home runs, pretty bad. Tyler Fitz has been legitimate, 15 home runs and 17 steals over 325 plate appearances, a 223 ISO. I don't know truly where it settles in, given the limited contact that we saw last year and the fact that this year's results have come on somewhat limited contact with just 31.5% hard hits, 8% barrels. So probably falls toward more of a good average on base, medium power Jeremy Pena type. But he's playable, easily playable with those numbers so far. Grant McCray, Brett Wisely from the left side, just mix and match quality at the end of the lineup there. And then the Diamondbacks, just firepower from top to bottom. Every single hitter in this 9-man confirmed lineup is above average for run creation. They top out at a 119 WRC plus on average for the full 9-man lineup. They're not expensive either. That same lineup has a $4,500 average price tag on DraftKings. $3,200 average price tag, a little bit higher on FanDuel. Corbin Carroll at 55.39. 21 home runs, 32 steals, a 195 ISO, creating runs 6% better than average. Fits into the outfield very easily at those prices with his upside. Ketel Marte, 61.42, has 35 home runs this year at 270 ISO, creating runs 53% better than average, topping out at a 19.7 in today's home run model against all the contact that Black's allowing. Tremendous option at second base, easily the best second baseman in baseball this year. 15.19 for Jock Peterson. Monster opportunity for him. 23 home runs from the left side. 244 ISO. Designed in a lab to hit home run off of Mason Black tonight. Definitely don't skip Jock Peterson in your Diamondback stacks today. He's going to be really popular, but he belongs in those stacks at that price. Christian Walker, 49-33, 16.13 in the home run mile. He's hit 26 this year, 220 ISO, creating runs 19% better than average. Fantastic option at first base. Luis Gurriel, 42-29. We're getting a little cheaper again now. Very playable piece. He's created runs 7% better than average. He's hit 18 home runs, stolen 7 bases. He hits for a decent average, gets on base at a decent clip. And monster ability to do anything on any given slate without true reliability or projectability to do any one of those things on any given slate. It's a different way of saying that he's good at everything, not great at anything. Jake McCarthy, 4,2900, slashing 284, 349, 400 this year, 10% better than average for run creation. 8 homers, 25 steals, playable in the outfield for a fair price. Again, Eugenio Suarez, today's home run pick of the day. Definitely interesting to me, down lineup. One of the hottest players in baseball over the second half. 4,400, 3,500. Price hasn't caught up on DraftKings. He's one shy of a 30-homer season. He's probably going to get there. 214 ISO, 114 WRC+. In fact, he's going to get there because he's tonight's home run pick. Gabriel Moreno, 34-26. Good slash line. 351 is a very strong on-base percentage for a catcher, over 336 plate appearances. More of a correlated scoring option, but that's perfectly fine from down lineup. You grab him, you wrap him back around for Carol Marte and Peterson to drive in. It's kind of like whoever we were talking about in that role for cheaper price at the very beginning of the slate. And then Geraldo Perdomo at 35-27, a playable shortstop. He's on that next tier down or even one further down from that. But he gets on at a 343 clip. He was good on base and correlated scoring option last year. Has upside as a wraparound play. So both of those guys are interesting positionally and price-wise in those spots to wrap back around to that. Diamondbacks bats, Zach Gallen. And just Giants like Giants hedge, Giants contrarian. It's on the board a little bit. Mason Black, pretty hard no. Merrill or Tatis, last man in. Oof, Trav, that's a difficult question. It is Tatis, but it's closer than it ought to be. What are we talking about? Mamba doesn't like the Fede play. Like Gomber more than Fede if I was going to do it, says Travis. Hey, I don't think that's crazy. Tizzle pointing out, he sarcastically said you can play all sides. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Mamba stopped listening when I said Fede. I do think that they're both playable. I do. We went through it. You can rewind and listen to the 20-minute rant that I went on about the playability. It's Coors Field. Neither one of those guys is a good pitcher. Both of those guys are capable of giving you 6 or 7 clean innings. We just saw it yesterday. It's just that kind of a start. Fitz also works in that capacity, as Travis Duarte is pointing out. I do think that that's interesting, given the incredibly diminished version of the Blue Jays. Vladdy's a better hitter than anybody's going to have to face in that Rockies and Cardinals game, though. So anyway, this last one up, it is another one that kind of falls into that bucket. As elite as these two teams are, it's one where I do lean pitching. These two pitchers are ace caliber guys who are very, very good and good enough to keep these teams off the board, even with their low strikeout natures. But both of these teams are good enough to put 3 or 4 runs on Cease and Flaherty and kind of ruin their DFS starts at gigantic price tags. So there is a lot of danger. They don't have to get blown up at these prices to just get bypassed by a lot of cheaper options on the board. So I don't really think we're in a Dylan Cease gave up 9 runs to the Dodgers and went an inning and a third tonight. I don't think we're in Jack Flaherty got blown up by the Padres territory. But Jack Flaherty went 5 2/3, gave up 3 runs, came away with 6 strikeouts. That's not necessarily a slate winning performance at those prices and what the ownership's going to look like. Same thing with Cease on the other side. Either one of these guys absolutely could go out and win the slate, though. They both definitely belong in lineups. 93-10-4, good pricing for Cease. He's got a 29.8% strikeout rate, a 3.42 ERA with a 3.37 xFIP, dominant rating by Stuff Plus, highest on this slate because Chris Sale somehow rates out as a below average Stuff Plus pitcher. Forgot to mention that earlier. 14.6% swinging, 29.3% CSW for Cease this year. He's been absolutely tremendous. Just a tough matchup against the Dodgers in their sub 20% strikeout rate. For Jack Flash on the other side, 30.1% strikeouts, a 3.10 ERA with a 2.97 xFIP, 5.6% walk rate, 13.4% swinging, 31.4% CSW. Both guys, medium to average in terms of the power. There, you can hit a home run against either one of these guys, but neither one is bad at checking power. Cease has been a little bit more effective at it so far this season, and boy, don't you think the Tigers wish they still had Jack Flaherty? Yikes. If you're stacking this team up against Flaherty, Lucid Eyes, reasonable option off the top because he's very, very cheap. Doesn't fit in at second base on DraftKings, which is problematic, but it's not like he's a positional conflict with anybody. You don't really care about Donovan Solano later in the lineup. Second base is where you want him on FanDuel for 2,800. He's a good average hitter, decent on base this year, 109 WRC plus. He's just okay though. He hasn't been the elite weapon for correlated scoring that he was last year, but it's a great spot in the lineup ahead of Fernando Tatis, Jurickson Profar, Manny Machado. All these guys are in play. Doesn't look like this lineup's in yet on Labs. But to address the Tatis or Merrill question, for a monster price difference on both sides, really, I mean, it depends on what you can buy, I guess. Because you said it was last man in, but that's not really last man in when they're separated by $900. There's something you can do with that money in that lineup. So Merrill, not a bad alternative if you're spending that $900 wisely. Same thing on FanDuel where they're separated by $400. It's a little bit closer there. Merrill's been tremendous, but Tatis is a superstar. The results this year have been a little bit mixed, but he's been surging at the end. He missed a lot of time, 421 plate appearances. He still hit 20 home runs, stolen 10 bases, 279, 342, 493, a 214 ISO. His creator runs 36% better than average. In a more complete season, Jackson Merrill has 24 homers, 16 steals, 292, 325, 501, a 209 ISO, 130 WRC+. But you just need to look back for numbers for Tatis. Last year, 25 homers, 29 steals, a 191 ISO, and 635, a 113 WRC+. There's a lot of upside in Fernando Tatis. But again, it depends on what you do with that price savings. Profar has dipped below 4,000 on DraftKings, 3,900. He's slashing 285, 384, 469. He's got 24 home runs and 10 stolen bases, a 184 ISO. I don't really get it. Fire away. It's like I was making that price at the beginning of the season and they just stuck with it. 3,500 on FanDuel is a lot more appropriate for the player that he's been this year in his late breakout. Machado at 5,036, totally reasonable. He's got a shot at his 30th home run tonight, 203 ISO, 123 WRC+. Love Manny Machado. Merrill, totally playable, too cheap at 4,200. Doesn't make any sense for if not the rookie of the year, the runner-up in the National League. I just read the numbers a second ago. He's also very low strikeout, low walk, 11.2% barrels and 44.2% hard hits on that kind of contact frequency. The kid is just good. 3,300 on FanDuel is too low. 4,200 on DraftKings is just ridiculously too low. Xander Bogaerts at 4,000, 2,900. Gonna be playable down the stretch here. 11 home runs, 13 steals. It's not a good season. It's not a total waste of time, though. Still playable with upside. Jake Cronenworth, mix and match quality, 17 home runs, 5 steals, 325 on base, a 107 WRC+. Still playable. Also very cheap in the middle infield. Solano, a line drive hitter, 2,600 at first base, 27 at 3 positions on FanDuel. You prefer him at second base on FanDuel. 284, 341, 410, a very involved player, 115 WRC+. And then Higgy with his 16 home runs and 251 plate appearances gives you a little bit of power potential. But again, Flaherty, not overly easy to hit a home run against. Shohei Ohtani is a superstar, 7,500, 5,300. Indisputably fair pricing for what he's done this year. 53 homers, 55 stolen bases, a 339 ISO, a 177 WRC+. Mookie pairs with him very nicely if you can manage to afford it. That's where your cheap pitchers come in. That's where your Coors Field options come in. 75 and 6,000, that's excessive for two hitters, but they're very, very good. 19 homers and 16 steals from Mookie, 45% better than average with a 200+ on ISO. Fantastic option at multiple positions. Second base eligible on FanDuel is very appealing. Freddie Freeman for 5,000, 3,600, 22 home runs, a 193 ISO, 137 WRC+. Still a great option if you're stacking up Dodgers. Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, tons of power from those two guys. They're both sub 5,000, 35 and 3,600 against these here. Little bit of a price tag there Sub 5,000 for those two hitters, even against Cease, has a little bit more appeal. But it's still only in a if you're stacking Dodgers kind of a sense. They're not going to go to the Dodgers just because those guys are cheap because Dylan Cease is on the mound. But those are two very playable power bats. Teoscar's got 31 home runs in 629 plate appearances. Muncy has 15 in just 275 chances. A 268 ISO, 136 WRC+. Plus. He's a tremendous 3 true outcomes hitter. Will Smith, very playable catcher bat with a little bit of power, 19 home runs in 530 chances. Tommy Edmonds given them a lot in 130 plate appearances since joining the team. He's a medium power and stolen base guy when he's getting on. Correlated scoring is really what he does by and large, but he's been interesting, fits into multiple positions on both sides for a fair price. Gavin Lux, a lot of skills, medium output, 10 home runs, 5 steals over 470 is not that appealing, but he does have a skill set to work with at second base for a cheap price. And then Miguel Rojas, just a mix in. 284, 336, 412, a 111 WRC+. Plus. It's been good, but limited option. And that is the top to bottom. It's coming up on 6 o'clock on the nose. We actually got through it in a decent amount of time today. Under 2 hours through the 9 games. I thought I was going long. Turns out I was talking fast. I've gotten an absurd number of text messages during this show again. Probably people responding to my text message that I sent mid-show mentioning that Mets-Braves game. Mama said, now quit being wrong. Can you guys hear my stomach growling? I'm starving. I haven't eaten anything yet today. Time to go get a sandwich or order a pizza or something after this. Monty Pritchett says, Terry hit cruise control midway through. Good job. Thanks for sharing. Best of luck. Best of luck to you too, pal. So one last time at the pitching slate. Gets very differently shaped. No Chris Sale off the top. That Mets game is postponed. So you get Cody Bradford as your top projected pitcher. He's definitely going to be popular, but it looked like Gallen was outdrawing him a little bit for 200 more on the DraftKings slate. That makes Bradford a little bit appealing over there if he's going to be lower owned than Gallen. Dylan Cease, Jack Flaherty, two equally playable pitchers in two equally challenging matchups. I do prefer the pitching in that one. I forgot to rank it. Boy, that's tough. Cease, Flaherty, Dodgers, Padres, I guess. But all 4 things in that are essentially tied. Both pitchers playable, but high danger spot because they only need to give up a couple few runs to those teams to ruin the day on those prices. Even if they have okay days, they get bypassed by a lot of those cheap options. Kevin Gausman, kind of interesting against Boston, even with all the threatening lefties in that lineup. With no Rafi Devers, it's a more interesting spot. So I kind of like that with a little bit of additional strikeout upside. 8,600 is worth finding out on DraftKings. A little bit clunkier, but 9,000 is affordable on FanDuel. Eflin against the Yanks could have a decent day, but you can see the gap in the projections there. There's also a gap in the ceiling, and the Yanks line up pretty well against them for some power. Fede, again, 66. He's undeniably in the middle of the board there. There is strikeout upside. There's a lot of downside. It's not a safe spot, but there are a few safe spots on this slate, really. Like even Cody Bradford against the A's, Zach Gallen against the Giants. Neither one of those spots is truly entirely safe. Everything else comes with at least a little bit of danger, if not a lot of danger. So for 66, I'm perfectly fine rolling the dice on Fede and hoping for a little bit of additional strikeout upside. By that same token, though, 62 for Eddie Cabrera with his demonstrable strikeout upside against a team that does have some strikeout in it. It's just a really, really shaky spot because he's so high walk, because there is power on that team, because there are patient hitters on that team. So I think the Cabrera spot is the more dangerous of the him or Fede spot, but for 400 less, he's got the higher ceiling. Brady Basso, playable at 75. 68 is very interesting to me on the FanDuel slate. If I need to get really cheap on FanDuel, I might go directly to Basso against Texas and hope for the best. Vegas has Texas sub 4 implied runs. Feeds a little bit of the potential upside for Basso. Peterson's not on the board anymore. Simeon Woods Richardson probably limited to 4 or 5 innings. Jose Suarez, mix and match quality with potentially a little bit of upside. He's yellow there because the DraftKings projection probably has to go up slightly. I got to check that out in the next couple of minutes. Keep an eye on the site for that. I'll let you know in Discord as well. Stroman against Baltimore, pretty challenging, especially at price. Fitz definitely on the board against a very diminished version of that Toronto team. And then Gomber and Mason Black. Gomber is moderately playable with a limited ceiling. Mason Black doesn't look all that playable. Power suggesting the meat lovers pizza, garlic knots with a side of marinara and Alfredo sauce. That'll work. Best stack of the day? The Diamondbacks, if we're looking for a non-Coors Field stack, is the best stack of the day. Twins, not bad. Coors Field, obvious. Braves no longer on the board. The Yankees, obvious. Well, I think Twins, D-backs. It's a pretty straightforward day. It really is. There's not a lot of mystery on this board. Best guess at a sub-4 run team that goes off. Maybe that's a more interesting way to do it. Probably the Red Sox. Just it's the highest quality lineup. I'm excluding the Orioles from that equation because they're too high quality and they'll just have ownership. It's probably the Red Sox. Orioles are just as likely. I mean, it's obvious from those totals. The ones I was considering there, though, were basically the A's, the Angels, and the Red Sox. Because I think those will be the lower owned of those teams. The Orioles will get their due because it's Yankee Stadium and all. But yeah, I could see the O's definitely getting, or the A's, the O's. The A's definitely getting there. The Angels somehow are shakier, but Davis Martin is not overly challenging of a pitcher. And the Red Sox are just the best out of those three lineups. So that's the way I would look at that. Home run board one last quick time, and then let me get out of here and fix that pitching projection and get everything updated. Again, come on back tomorrow. We'll be doing whatever the baseball slate looks like. I haven't checked yet, but I assume it's a short Thursday. We'll also do showdown and main slate overview football shows. So be here for that. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, and Jock Peterson, the three top hitters on the home run model, all from the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's why they look like the best non-Coors stack of the day. They might even be the best overall stack of the day because both those Coors teams suck. You also get Lourdes Gurriel not far behind. Eugenio Suarez, the home run pick of the day at 9.86, just under the magic number. Decent amount of power showing from the Yankees, of course, with Judgy and Soto above the line, Giancarlo Stanton above the line. A little bit for the A's, which is why I consider them one of those threatening teams. You've got Brent Rooker and Shea Langoliers both showing a good amount of power. That's up against Bradford, so challenging pitcher on the other side. But that's about it. Go for his best pitchers. We just did 2 hours that was entirely focused on who the best pitchers of the day were, and I just rebroke it down at the end of the show here. Chris Sale's not on the board. Bradford and Gallen definitely look like realistic options up here. He's going to be more popular on DraftKings for the $200 difference. Bradford's not a bad alternative. Both of these guys super playable, but both in danger spots because 3 or 4 runs could damage them at those prices. Gausman's playable against the diminished version of the Red Sox, but it's a high danger spot with all those good lefties that can target him for a little bit of power upside. He's been shaky this season and he's been lower strikeout than normal. Eflin is playable against the Yankees. There's some Ks there for just 8,000, but it's a high danger spot. Fedde's playable at Coors Field, oddly. Cabrera in a lot of danger against Minnesota, but a very high strikeout option for just 6,200. Neither of those guys is overly appealing on FanDuel. Davis Martin, not that appealing, but believable potential for a 1 in 5 strikeout kind of day. 5 and change innings for a cheap price. He's in the bargain bin. Basso against Texas. Definitely playable on both sides. Kind of interesting. That man-for-man Texas lineup is not terrible, but they're sub 4. Not on the board anymore for him, and these guys are all just moderately playable. Go visit drunk. Good stuff, boys. Let me check out of here. Hit the like and the subscribe. Check out acemind.io. Come on back tomorrow. Jump into the Discord if you're not in there. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle if you want these updates. Retweet and like those things when you see them pop up. I appreciate that. And that is about it for this show. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Keep an eye on the site for projections and everything coming up for the football slates. Otherwise, we will talk mañana. See you.